Looking back now, I can see all the little threads that led me down that path, each one pulling tighter until I was tangled in something far bigger and stranger than I could have ever imagined. I was 22 then, fresh out of college, feeling invincible and a little bit naive. My summer job at the regional park office was supposed to be a stepping stone, something to put on a resume, mostly involving directing tourists to restrooms and restocking brochures. But on my days off, I craved the real wilderness, the parts of the park that weren't manicured for family picnics. I'd grown up in the shadow of these mountains, their jagged peaks a constant backdrop to my childhood. Even so, there were always new trails to discover, forgotten logging roads and remote sections of the sprawling state park that remained untouched by the average hiker. My go-to escape was the Old North Ridge Trail. It wasn't particularly challenging, mostly a gradual incline through dense pine forests, but it led to some truly isolated overlooks. My usual routine was to head out early, catch the sunrise from one of the higher points, and be back before the midday heat made the woods too stifling. I'd done it dozens of times, always alone. I knew those woods like the back of my hand, or so I thought. This particular Tuesday morning, I'd woken up later than usual. A late night of video games had pushed my alarm snooze button one too many times. By the time I finally dragged myself out of bed, the sun was already a good way up, promising a scorching day. My internal clock, so attuned to the crisp morning air of the mountains, was screaming at me to just stay home, but a stubborn streak, fueled by youth and a touch of overconfidence, pushed me out the door. "It'll be fine," I told myself, stuffing an extra water bottle and a granola bar into my small backpack. Just a quick loop. That was my first mistake, one of many, ignoring that quiet voice, that gut feeling that something was off. Another was the sheer isolation I was courting. I hadn't told anyone exactly which trail I was taking, just going for a hike. No cell service up there, not really. Just me, the trees, and the wildlife. I parked my beat-up sedan in the small, unofficial pull-off that marked the trailhead. A faded, graffiti-covered sign warned of bears and advised carrying water, its message mostly obscured by moss and bullet holes. I grinned, real wilderness. The air was already thick and humid, the kind that promised thunder later in the day, but the sky above was a brilliant, cloudless blue. As I started up the familiar path, the forest quickly swallowed the sounds of the distant highway. The usual symphony of chirping birds and rustling leaves was there, a comforting drone that always signaled a successful escape from civilization. I hiked for about an hour, pushing myself a little harder than usual to make up for the late start. The sun filtered through the canopy in bright, shimmering shafts, turning the dust motes in the air into glittering particles. Sweat trickled down my back, and my breathing grew heavy, but there was a certain satisfaction in the exertion. I was just reaching the point where the trail flattened out before its final ascent to the overlook, a stretch I always enjoyed for its relative ease, when I noticed something. It wasn't a sound or a smell or even a sudden visual change. It was a subtle shift in the light itself. One moment the dappled sunlight was normal, bright, and warm. The next, a patch of the forest floor off to my left seemed to shimmer. It caught my eye, a strange, vibrant green that pulsed with an almost internal luminescence, even in the broad daylight. My steps faltered. I stopped, tilting my head, trying to make sense of it. It looked like moss growing low to the ground, clinging to the base of an old, fallen log. But it wasn't just reflecting the sunlight, it was emitting its own light, a soft, emerald glow, vivid and undeniable, right there in the middle of the morning. The air around it felt suddenly still, and the usual forest sounds seemed to recede, leaving an unnerving quiet in its wake. My heart thrummed an uneven rhythm against my ribs. Disbelief warred with an instinctive pull, a strange magnetism radiating from the vibrant green. It was so out of place, so undeniably unnatural. Every fiber of my being, every logical thought screamed that it was impossible, some trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by dehydration or exhaustion. But my eyes, wide and fixed, saw it with stark clarity, a living, breathing emerald ember, pulsing with an inner light that defied explanation. The silence grew heavier, pressing in from all sides. It wasn't just the absence of chirps and rustles. It was an active quiet, an emptiness that felt vast and ancient, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The air, which had been thick and humid only moments before, now felt cool, almost damp, around the glowing patch. A faint, almost imperceptible hum reached my ears, a low thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate deep within my chest, and then a smell. Not the familiar scent of pine needles and damp earth, but something else entirely. A clean, metallic tang mixed with a strange sweetness, like ozone after a lightning strike, but laced with the aroma of forgotten flowers. It was intoxicating, disorienting. Cautiously, I took a step closer, then another. My backpack felt heavy, my legs a little shaky. The fallen log was old, its bark stripped away in places, revealing smooth, silvered wood. The moss wasn't just on top, it seemed to be growing from within the log itself, pushing out through cracks and crevices, creating a glowing seam along its length. It covered an area about the size of a dinner plate, its tendrils thick and velvety, a mesmerizing tapestry of impossible green. I reached out a hand, my fingers trembling slightly. Common sense told me not to touch it, that anything so anomalous might be dangerous, but curiosity, that potent, undeniable human drive, overrode caution. My fingertips hovered inches above the luminous surface. The air between my hand and the moss shimmered, a visible distortion, like heat rising from asphalt, but cold. As my skin brushed against the soft, bioluminescent tendrils, a jolt, not of electricity, but of pure, raw energy, shot through me. It wasn't painful, but it was profoundly unsettling. It was as if every nerve ending in my body suddenly flared awake, vibrating with an intensity I'd never experienced. A wave of dizziness washed over me and the world tilted. Colors intensified, sounds sharpened, and for a fleeting second I felt an overwhelming sense of connection, as if the moss, the log, the very forest itself were pouring their ancient memories directly into my mind. I saw flashes, towering trees reaching for the sun, millennia passing in a blink, the slow, relentless march of seasons. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. I stumbled back, gasping, pulling my hand away as if burned. The moss continued to glow, serene and indifferent, as if nothing had happened. My mind reeled. What was that? A hallucination? A neurological short circuit? My palm tingled, a warmth spreading through it, not unpleasant, but alien. I stared at my hand, then back at the moss, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This was beyond anything I'd ever encountered, beyond anything I could have ever imagined existing in these familiar woods. The silence persisted, an unnatural shroud. I fumbled for my phone, a futile gesture given the lack of signal, but it was a reflex, a desperate attempt to reconnect with the rational world. No bars, of course. I took a shaky breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I needed to document this, not just for myself, but because no one would believe me. I pulled out my phone again, ignoring the signal indicator, and snapped a picture. The screen, however, only showed a blur of light, a green smear against a dark background, completely failing to capture the intricate detail or the ethereal glow. It was as if the camera sensor couldn't process the light source, or perhaps the light source itself was fundamentally different from what the technology was designed to record. Frustration mingled with a rising sense of unease. My initial wonder was giving way to a prickle of fear. This wasn't just a strange plant, this was something fundamentally other. And I was alone, deep in the woods, with no way to explain what I was seeing, let alone what I had felt. I made a conscious decision. I wasn't going to just walk away. My rational mind screamed caution, but that powerful jolt, that fleeting connection, had stirred something ancient and reckless within me. I had to know more. This wasn't just a curiosity, it felt like a door had opened, revealing a hidden layer of reality. I knelt beside the log, keeping a respectful distance this time, my eyes scanning the surrounding area. There was nothing else. No other glowing patches, no strange formations, just the normal forest floor, dappled sunlight, and the usual undergrowth. It was as if this one spot was a tear in the fabric of the ordinary world. The air around the moss still felt different, cooler, with that subtle hum. As I studied the moss more closely, I noticed something else, something I'd missed in my initial shock. It wasn't just growing on the log in one spot near the root end of the fallen tree. The moss seemed to converge, forming a denser, almost pulsating mass. And beneath that mass, the ground itself looked disturbed. Not like something had dug there, but more like the earth had buckled, a subtle depression, as if something heavy had pressed down on it, or something had erupted from beneath. Driven by an irresistible urge, I reached for a fallen branch nearby, using it to gently prod the earth around the dense moss patch. The soil was loose, surprisingly so, as if recently turned. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the ground as the stick touched it. My heart hammered. This wasn't a natural phenomenon, something had happened here. With growing apprehension, I used the stick to carefully scrape away some of the loose soil around the base of the moss. It crumbled easily, revealing not solid earth, but something dark and granular, almost like fine ash, but impossibly black, absorbing the ambient light rather than reflecting it. And beneath that, something else. It was metallic, a smooth, dark surface, almost obsidian in its sheen, but not rock. It glinted faintly where the light caught it, a deep, unsettling violet black. My breath hitched. This was no ordinary log, no ordinary moss. This was a cover. My mind raced, struggling to reconcile the impossible. Was it some kind of exotic meteor fragment, a forgotten piece of ancient technology? The sheer strangeness of it felt like a punch to the gut. I continued to scrape, the stick making a soft clink as it tapped against the hidden object. The surface was cool to the touch, even through the branch, and it was massive. The part I'd uncovered suggested a curved edge, indicating something much larger than a mere rock. The silence of the forest was now oppressive, a taut wire stretched to breaking point. I felt a growing sense of vulnerability, a chilling awareness of my isolation. What if this wasn't just a discovery, but an intrusion? What if whatever this object was, it wasn't meant to be found? I spent the next hour, maybe more, in a trance-like state, carefully clearing away the earth around the hidden object, using my hands and the stick. The black ash-like material was everywhere around it, absorbing light and muffling sound. As I cleared more, the scale of the thing became apparent. It wasn't small, it was huge. The fallen log was not just lying on it, but seemed to have grown over it, the roots of the nearby pines wrapping around its unseen contours. It was as if it had been buried here for centuries, slowly becoming one with the forest floor. The revealed surface was utterly smooth, seamless, a perfect curve of that dark, violet-black metal. There were no rivets, no joins, no visible seams, just an impossibly uniform expanse. It felt alien, completely foreign to any human construction I'd ever seen. It was cool to the touch, emitting a faint, almost imperceptible hum that resonated in my bones. The moss, the luminous green moss, grew only in areas where the surface of this object was exposed, as if feeding directly from it, or perhaps acting as some kind of symbiotic skin. My scientific curiosity was now battling a primal dread. This was too big, too strange, and I was alone. What if it was dangerous? What if it was radioactive? Or worse, the metallic tang in the air intensified and that sweet, floral undertone grew stronger, almost cloying. I felt a strange dizziness, a lightheadedness that wasn't entirely unpleasant, but still unnerving. I sat back on my heels, my hands covered in the strange black dust my clothes smudged. I stared at the exposed curve of the object, gleaming faintly beneath the emerald moss. It looked like the flank of some colossal, slumbering beast, its skin impossibly smooth and dark. I tried to make sense of it, to categorize it, to force it into a familiar framework, but it defied all logic. It was just there, a massive, silent enigma, pulsing with a faint, internal energy that manifested as the glowing moss. The sun had climbed higher, now directly overhead, painting the forest in stark contrasts of light and shadow. The humidity was building again, a stifling blanket, yet around the object, the air remained cool. The unnatural quiet, however, had begun to recede very subtly. I could hear the distant chirping of a bird, the rustle of leaves in a higher breeze. It was as if the immediate, intense sensory distortion had been a localized effect, a field generated by the object that temporarily altered my perception. Or perhaps my senses were simply readjusting. I knew I couldn't stay here forever, but I also knew I couldn't leave without doing something. Documenting it was crucial, but my phone was useless for anything beyond basic photos that failed to capture its essence. I had to go back, get real equipment, maybe even bring someone, but who would believe me? And who would I trust with such a profound secret? The park rangers. They'd laugh me out of the office, or worse, dismiss it as some kind of elaborate hoax or drug-induced delusion. A shiver ran down my spine despite the heat. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a burden, a terrifying, exhilarating, isolating burden. The sheer impossibility of it weighed on me. This object had been here, hidden for God knew how long, in a park I thought I knew intimately. How many times had I walked past this very spot, oblivious to the ancient mystery slumbering beneath my feet? I pulled out my water bottle, taking a long, deep drink, trying to clear my head. My throat felt dry, my heart still racing. I had to think, logically, step by step. First, I needed to mark the location more precisely. The trail wasn't official, and this particular spot was off the main path, easily missed. I looked around, searching for a natural landmark. A gnarled oak, ancient and distinctive, stood a few yards away, its lowest branch reaching out like a crooked arm. I pulled a small, colorful bandana from my backpack and tied it securely to the branch, a bright splash of orange against the muted greens and browns. It was a subtle marker, not obvious to a casual passerby, but clear enough for me to find again. Next, I needed to cover the object. I carefully pushed the loose, black earth back over the exposed surface, then replaced the top layer of normal soil, disturbing it as little as possible. The fallen log still lay over the densest part of the moss, concealing the heart of the anomaly. I even gathered some fallen leaves and pine needles to camouflage the disturbed ground. It wouldn't fool a forensic team, but it would be enough to keep it hidden from an average hiker. I didn't want anyone else stumbling upon this. Not yet, not until I understood. As I worked, a new thought solidified in my mind. This wasn't just an object, it felt alive, not in a biological sense, but in an energetic one. That hum, that cool air, the glowing moss, it all pointed to an active internal process. What was it doing? What was its purpose? The questions spiraled, each one leading to more profound and unsettling possibilities. Finally, the sight was as concealed as I could make it. I stood back, brushing dirt from my hands and clothes. The forest looked normal again, the sunlight filtering through the canopy, the distant sounds of nature returning. Only the subtle orange bandana on the oak branch and the lingering metallic scent in the air hinted at the profound secret I had just uncovered. I turned and began the hike back down the trail. My usual brisk pace was replaced by a slow, thoughtful walk. My mind was a whirlwind of images and sensations. The vibrant green glow, the smooth violet-black surface, the jolt of energy, the fleeting visions, it was all too real, too vivid to dismiss. The descent felt longer, heavier. Every shadow seemed to hold a new secret, every rustle of leaves a whispered warning. The familiar trail, which I had once known like the back of my hand, now felt foreign, imbued with a hidden layer of wonder and terror. I was no longer just a hiker, I was a custodian of an impossible truth. By the time I reached my car, the sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the western sky with hues of orange and purple. The air was still thick with humidity, and I could feel the first distant rumblings of thunder. My body ached, not just from the physical exertion, but from the sheer mental strain. I unlocked my beat-up sedan, climbed in, and started the engine. The mundane roar of the engine was a welcome sound, a grounding force after the ethereal silence of the forest. I drove home on autopilot, the world outside my car windows seeming dull and flat compared to the vivid anomaly I had left behind. The highway sounds, the passing cars, the familiar landmarks, they all felt like a thin veneer over a deeper, stranger reality that I now knew existed. Once home, I showered, scrubbing at the black dust, but the metallic scent seemed to cling to my skin, a phantom echo. My hands still tingled faintly. I changed into clean clothes, made myself a hasty meal, but my appetite was gone. My mind kept replaying the scene, obsessively analyzing every detail. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. But who? My parents, they'd worry themselves sick, probably try to drag me to a doctor. My few friends, they'd think I was crazy. The park authorities, that was a dangerous road to go down. This wasn't a lost hiker or a broken sign. This was something potentially world-altering. And I was just a 22-year-old kid with a summer job. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose, a clarity born of restless sleep and feverish dreams. I needed information. I needed to understand what I had found. The park office, with its dusty brochures and endless stream of tourist questions, suddenly seemed like a sanctuary, a place where I could hide my true intentions while gathering what I needed. My job mostly consisted of manning the front desk, answering phones, and directing visitors. It was mind-numbingly dull, which was perfect. It left my mind free to wander, to formulate plans. I spent my breaks in the small, cluttered-back office, ostensibly researching local flora for a park display. But my real focus was far more esoteric. I dove into old geological surveys, archived reports, anything that might mention unusual deposits or anomalies in the North Ridge area. Nothing. The records were meticulously kept, detailing everything from rock formations to soil composition, but there was no mention of anything resembling what I had seen. I expanded my search, delving into local legends, folklore, even online forums about strange phenomena. I looked up bioluminescent mosses. They existed, but nothing like the intense, self-generated light I had witnessed, especially not in broad daylight. I researched rare earth metals, unusual alloys, even ancient civilizations and forgotten technologies. It was a needle in a haystack, a desperate search for a category to fit the uncategorizable. Days bled into a week. My routine at the park office became a front, a facade behind which I meticulously planned my return. I needed to be prepared. I bought a small, rugged digital camera, one with manual controls that I hoped would better capture the glow. I acquired a headlamp, a small toolkit, a portable battery pack, and a more robust backpack. I even bought a compass, though I knew the trails well. It felt like a necessary precaution for whatever deeper exploration lay ahead. My meager summer earnings were quickly being converted into equipment for a secret expedition. The metallic, sweet scent, though fainter, still lingered in my nose sometimes, especially when I was alone, lost in thought. And the tingling in my hand, it hadn't completely disappeared. It was a subtle, persistent hum beneath my skin, a constant reminder of the encounter. I developed a cover story for my colleagues, explaining that I was now venturing into more challenging, remote trails in the park, hence the new gear. No one paid much attention. They were too busy with their own routines, their own lives. My isolation, which had once felt like a choice, now felt like a necessity, a protective shell around my burgeoning secret. One afternoon, a few days after my discovery, a grizzled old park ranger named Bill stopped by my desk. Bill had been with the Park Service for decades, a gruff but kind man who knew the mountains like the back of his hand, often claiming to have seen just about everything these old woods have to offer. "You been up North Ridge way much lately, kid?" he asked, leaning against the counter, his eyes twinkling. He always called me kid. My heart lurched. Had he seen my marker? Had someone else? "Just a bit, Bill," I replied, trying to keep my voice even, trying to explore some of the less traveled paths. He grunted, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Good on ya, but be careful up there. North Ridge ain't like the other trails, always had a reputation." "Reputation?" I prompted, trying to sound casually curious, not desperate for information. Old-timers, they used to say it was thin up there, like the veil between worlds was stretched mighty thin. Strange things happen, people get lost, come back, different or sometimes don't come back at all. But that's just old wives' tales, of course, he added, a twinkle in his eye that suggested he didn't entirely believe that last part. "Just keep your wits about you." He walked off, leaving me with a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Thin," the word resonated, echoing the feeling I'd had when I touched the moss, that fleeting glimpse of other realities. Bill's casual warning, meant as a harmless piece of park lore, only cemented my resolve. He confirmed in his own way that there was indeed something special, something profoundly unusual about the North Ridge. My next day off, a Tuesday, exactly a week after my initial discovery, I was ready. I told my parents I was going camping for the night, a lie to buy myself more time without suspicion. My backpack was carefully packed. The new camera, a small shovel, a trowel, a pick, a notebook, pencils, headlamp, first aid kit, extra water, high-energy snacks, and a portable radio. A last-ditch attempt at communication if something went wrong. I felt like a secret agent embarking on a solo mission. The air was heavy again, promising a repeat of the previous week's afternoon storms. But I couldn't wait. The pull of the unknown, the lure of the mystery, was too strong. I needed to get back to that spot, to that shimmering patch of green, to the silent, dark enigma beneath the earth. I parked my car in the unofficial pull-off, the graffiti-covered sign a familiar sentinel. The forest swallowed me whole as I stepped onto the trail. This time there was no casual joy in the hike, only a focused determination laced with a palpable sense of apprehension. Every sound, every shadow held a heightened significance. My senses were on high alert, sharpened by the knowledge of what lay hidden. It took me just over an hour to reach the familiar stretch of flattened trail. My heart pounded as I approached the area. I scanned the trees for my orange bandana, and there it was, a reassuring splash of color against the deep green foliage. A wave of relief, followed by a surge of adrenaline, washed over me. It was still here, undisturbed. I veered off the main trail, pushing through the undergrowth towards the gnarled oak. The air grew cooler as I neared the spot, and that faint, metallic sweet scent began to permeate the forest. The quiet returned, not absolute this time, but a hushed reverence, as if the forest was once again holding its breath. And then I saw it, the fallen log, and at its base, glowing with an unwavering emerald light, was the moss. It was just as vibrant, just as impossibly beautiful as I remembered. It pulsed faintly, a living heart in the stillness of the woods. The black, ash-like material I had used to rebury the object last week was barely visible, having been absorbed or settled. It was as if the earth itself had tried to erase my attempt at concealment, drawn back by some unseen force radiating from beneath. I knelt, my gaze fixed on the glowing patch. The hum was stronger now, a deep resonance that vibrated through the ground, up my legs, and into my chest. My hand, the one that still held that faint tingle, instinctively reached out. This time I didn't hesitate. I pressed my palm flat against the moss. The jolt was immediate, far more intense than before. It wasn't just energy, it was information, a torrent of sensations and images that flooded my mind. I gasped, falling back onto my heels, my head spinning. This time the vision wasn't fleeting, it was sustained, overwhelming. I was seeing through the moss, through the log, through layers of earth, down into the heart of the object. It was massive, far larger than I had initially uncovered. It stretched deep into the earth, a colossal dark structure impossibly smooth, made of that violet-black metal, and it wasn't inert. It was humming with intricate glowing patterns, a network of lines and symbols that pulsed with a deep internal light like circuitry made of pure energy. These patterns were not static, they shifted and flowed like currents in a vast, subterranean river. The moss, I realized, was not just feeding on it. It was a visible manifestation of this internal energy, a biological interface, a way for the object to interact with the surface world. Then the vision shifted. I was no longer seeing into the object, but from it. I saw the surrounding forest not as individual trees, but as a vast, interconnected network. I saw the roots reaching deep into the earth, intertwining with something else, something I couldn't quite define, but which pulsed with the same internal energy as the object. It was as if the entire forest, at least in this immediate vicinity, was an extension of this buried structure. The connection deepened, became more personal. I felt an ancient awareness, not intelligent in a human sense, but deeply knowing, observing. It was a consciousness of vast scale, one that had witnessed geological ages, the slow dance of evolution, the rise and fall of countless species. It was a patient, silent presence, a repository of time. And then a new sensation, a pressure, a subtle internal command, gentle but firm. It wasn't in words, but in feeling, a direct impression on my mind. Dig. My eyes snapped open. I was back in the sun-dappled forest, the glowing moss beneath my hand, the hum vibrating through my body. The vision faded, but the impression, the command, remained. Dig. It wasn't malicious, wasn't threatening. It was an invitation, a request from an ancient, slumbering entity. My fear was overshadowed by a profound sense of awe and a strange, almost spiritual connection. I was being guided. This wasn't just an object anymore, it was something alive, something that could communicate. I reached for my small shovel, my hands moving with an almost instinctual urgency. The metallic scent in the air was now so strong it was almost suffocating, yet I found myself breathing deeply, inhaling the strange aroma as if it were oxygen itself. The sweet floral undertone was even more pronounced, intoxicating my senses. I started to dig, carefully removing the soil around the densest patch of moss, following the contours of the buried object. The earth was surprisingly yielding, the black ash-like material seeming to crumble away at the slightest touch. It felt almost deliberate, as if the ground itself was facilitating my work. As I cleared away more earth, the violet-black surface was revealed, larger and more extensive than I had estimated. It curved sharply downwards, disappearing into the earth, suggesting an enormous scale. The moss clung tenaciously to its exposed surface, glowing ever more brightly as more of the object was revealed. The hum intensified, becoming a low thrum that reverberated in my chest, a deep, resonant frequency that seemed to shake the very ground. I realized now why the sound had been so muted last week. The earth itself had been dampening its output. As I removed the soil, the energy field around the object was expanding, becoming more potent. I was working in a frenzy, sweat pouring down my face, my muscles burning, but I didn't feel tired. The strange energy emanating from the object seemed to invigorate me, pushing me beyond my normal limits. My mind was clear, focused solely on the task at hand. The world outside this small, glowing circle ceased to exist. Minutes stretched into hours. The sun began its descent again, casting long shadows through the trees. I had dug a trench around a significant portion of the object, revealing a surface that was at least 15 feet long and 6 feet wide, curving downwards and disappearing into the darkness. It was massive, far too large for me to uncover entirely by myself. But I wasn't just digging randomly. The internal command, the impression from the object, seemed to guide my every move. It wasn't about completely unearthing it, it was about revealing a specific section. And as I dug, following the curvature, I noticed something new emerging. Where the dark, seamless surface curved most sharply, a pattern began to appear. Not the glowing internal circuitry I had seen in my vision, but an etched design on the exterior itself. It was faint at first, barely visible through the clinging moss, but as I carefully scraped away the last bits of soil and some of the more superficial moss, the pattern became clear. It was a symbol or a series of symbols. Intricate, geometric, yet organic, swirling patterns that defied easy categorization. They glowed faintly, a soft, internal luminescence mirroring the moss but with a cooler, purer light, a pale blue, almost white, against the violet-black surface. They seemed to shimmer, subtly shifting and breathing as if alive. I stared at the symbols, transfixed. They were unlike anything I had ever seen, yet they felt strangely familiar, as if I had glimpsed them in some half-forgotten dream. They pulsed in sync with the hum of the object, a silent, visual language. As I cleaned away more of the moss to fully reveal the symbols, one particular section caught my eye. It was larger, more prominent, a central motif within the intricate design. It looked like a stylized eye or perhaps a spiral galaxy surrounded by concentric rings and flowing lines. And beneath this central symbol, a faint line, barely visible, seemed to be etched into the surface, a seam. My heart hammered, a seam, a door, a panel, the possibility electrifying. The command dig seemed to sharpen, focusing my attention on this particular spot. I put down my shovel and picked up my trowel, working with meticulous care. The seam was incredibly fine, almost invisible, a testament to the seamless craftsmanship of the object. It was barely wider than a hair, yet it was undeniably there, running for about a foot beneath the central symbol. I pressed my fingers along the seam. It was smooth, cool, offering no purchase. My earlier thought about a door or panel seemed less likely now. There was no hinge, no latch, no obvious way to open it. Frustration flared, quickly replaced by a renewed sense of connection. The pressure in my mind, the subtle guidance, seemed to urge me to interact directly with the symbol itself. With a deep breath, I placed my tingling palm directly over the central, glowing blue symbol. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. The hum intensified to a roar, though it was still internal, felt more than heard. The moss around me erupted in a dazzling burst of emerald light, casting strange, dancing shadows through the darkening forest. The symbols beneath my hand flared, their cool blue light turning an incandescent white, burning brightly against the dark metal. And then the seam. It widened, not with a mechanical clunk, but with a soft, almost organic sigh, a whisper of air escaping. The perfectly smooth surface of the object seemed to fold inward, the violet-black metal dissolving into a shimmering distortion, like water disturbed by a stone. A rectangular section, about 2 feet tall and 1 foot wide, retracted smoothly into the interior of the larger object, revealing not solid metal, but a void. A column of pure, unadulterated light erupted from the opening. It was not harsh or blinding, but a soft, golden glow, pulsating with a gentle rhythm like a cosmic breath. It illuminated the entire trench, casting a warm, inviting light on the surrounding trees. The air immediately around the opening felt different, incredibly clean, almost sterile, and infused with an intensified version of that sweet, metallic, floral scent. The faint dizziness returned, but it was coupled with an overwhelming sense of peace, a profound tranquility that settled deep within my soul. I stumbled back, my eyes wide with disbelief and awe. My jaw hung open. A portal, a gateway, what had I just opened? The golden light extended upwards, forming a shimmering column that seemed to disappear into the forest canopy, as if reaching for the sky. It cast no shadows, only an all-encompassing, ethereal glow. And within that column, suspended in the radiant energy, I saw something. It was indistinct at first, shimmering with the light, but as my eyes adjusted, it began to resolve. A form, not human, not animal, but something utterly unique. It was tall and slender, its form fluid and constantly shifting, made of pure light and shadow. It had no discernible features, no face, no limbs in the conventional sense, yet it possessed an undeniable grace, an elegant presence that radiated immense power and wisdom. It pulsed gently, a silent, luminous entity suspended within the golden column. My heart hammered against my ribs, but it was no longer fear. It was pure, unadulterated wonder. I was witnessing something impossible, something that defied every law of nature I had ever known. The entity of light slowly, gracefully descended a few feet, its form becoming slightly more defined, more solid, though still ephemeral. It hovered just above the opening, radiating a silent warmth that seeped into my very bones. And then a thought, clear as a bell, resonated directly in my mind. It was not a voice I heard with my ears, but a profound understanding, a direct transmission of meaning, woven from light and sensation. Welcome, you have found us, you are a key. The words, or rather the impression of them, hit me with the force of a physical blow. A key, me, my mind reeled, trying to process the implications. This was beyond anything Bill's old wives' tales could ever have hinted at. This was a direct encounter with the truly alien, the truly ancient. The entity extended a shimmering tendril of light towards me. It was not a menacing gesture, but an invitation, a gentle beckoning. The column of golden light seemed to ripple, expanding slightly as if welcoming me in. The intoxicating scent grew stronger, and the peaceful dizziness threatened to overwhelm me. I felt a compelling urge to step forward, to enter that light, to embrace the unknown. But a tiny sliver of caution, a last vestige of my rational human self, held me back. What was this? What did it want? And what would happen if I stepped into that light? The sun was setting, the forest growing darker around the immediate glow of the object. Night was falling, and I was alone, deep in the wilderness, with something that was beyond comprehension. The entity remained still, patient, its shimmering tendril of light hovering, waiting. The message, "You are a key," reverberated in my mind, filling me with a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. I was on the precipice of something monumental, something that would irrevocably change my life or perhaps end it. The choice was mine. Step into the light or turn and run, trying to forget what I had seen, an impossible task. The air thrummed with ancient power, and the silence of the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my decision. The tendril of light pulsed, warm and inviting, yet utterly alien. The golden column shimmered, a silent beacon in the encroaching darkness of the forest. My breath hitched in my throat, a dry, ragged sound. Every instinct screamed danger, unknown, run, but an equal, more profound impulse, born of the powerful jolt and the direct mental command, whispered opportunity, connection, destiny. The silence around me was profound, broken only by the thrumming energy radiating from the object and the frantic beat of my own heart. I could feel the entity's presence, not as an individual with intentions, but as a vast, ancient consciousness, patient and profound. It wasn't urging me with force, but with an irresistible, gentle pull, like gravity on a falling leaf. My eyes, still wide with wonder, darted around the clearing. The trees, the disturbed earth, the half-buried object, it was all real. And now this shimmering doorway to the impossible. The choice felt monumental, heavier than any decision I'd ever faced. This wasn't about choosing a college major or a career path. It was about choosing a reality. I looked at my hand, the one that still tingled, the one that had initiated this profound contact. It felt different, subtly charged, as if it had absorbed some of the object's power. "You are a key." The impression resonated again, clearer now, less like a question and more like a statement of fact. Slowly, deliberately, I took a step, then another. My legs felt heavy, yet there was an undeniable lightness in my chest. The intoxicating scent grew stronger with each step, a heady mix of ozone and wildflowers that cleared my mind even as it disoriented my senses. The golden light bathed me warm and soothing, chasing away the chill of fear. The tendril of light reached out further, seeming to wrap around me not physically, but as a gentle, energetic embrace. My bare arm, where I had scraped it on a branch earlier, now glowed faintly under the light. The small cuts seemed to be knitting themselves closed, the skin smoothing over with impossible speed. A gasp escaped me. This light, this entity, this place was doing something to me. It wasn't just illumination, it was transformative. I reached the edge of the opening. The violet-black metal, so smooth and solid, now felt distant, irrelevant. All that mattered was the shimmering void, the golden light within. I could feel a faint breeze, though there was no wind in the forest, carrying that sweet metallic aroma from within the opening. It felt like breathing pure energy. Taking one last, shaky breath of forest air, I stepped into the column of light. It wasn't like stepping through a physical doorway. There was no threshold, no solid edge. It was like stepping into water, but water made of pure light and sound. My body didn't just move through it, it dissolved into it. For a terrifying, exhilarating second, I felt utterly formless, a collection of vibrating particles floating in an ocean of warmth and energy. My senses blurred, then sharpened to an impossible degree. I could taste the light, hear its hum as a symphony, see its golden warmth as a tangible presence. The dizziness intensified, but it wasn't unpleasant. It was a dizzying rush of sensation, an expansion of consciousness. The vision returned, but far more vivid, more immediate. I saw the network of glowing patterns within the colossal object beneath me, pulsing with complex, shifting information. I understood without words that this wasn't merely a machine. It was a vast, sentient system, an interconnected intelligence woven into the very fabric of existence. And the forest, I saw the roots of the trees not just intertwined with the object, but connected to it, drawing energy, sharing information. The entire ecosystem around this buried structure was like a living circuit board, powered and influenced by this ancient presence. The moss, I realized, was not just an interface. It was a conduit, a living nerve ending extending from the buried entity to the world above. It wasn't feeding on the object, it was part of it, an extension of its bioenergetic field. Then the formless, luminous entity coalesced around me, not physically touching, but surrounding me with its presence. The tendril of light, now thicker, more vibrant, seemed to weave itself into my own energy field. It was not an embrace, but a melding, a profound, non-physical communion. The entity was not merely speaking to me. It was speaking through me, sharing its vast repository of memories, impressions, and purposes. "We are the keepers," the impression resonated in my mind, a chorus of ancient voices, gentle and profound. "We preserve, we observe, we wait." I felt overwhelmed, a tiny human mind struggling to comprehend such immense scope. "Wait for what?" I stammered, my voice a mere whisper lost in the radiant glow. But I knew it wasn't a question that required spoken words. The answer began to unfold in my mind, a cascade of images and feelings. I saw civilizations rising and falling across countless star systems, echoes of ancient glories and tragic destructions. I saw worlds teeming with life, then rendered barren by cosmic catastrophes or self-inflicted wounds. I saw the endless cycle of creation and entropy, of light and shadow, playing out across the vast tapestry of the universe. And through it all, these keepers, or what remained of them, silently watching, preserving seeds of knowledge, fragments of culture, vital life energies. This object, this buried titan beneath the North Ridge, was not a ship, not a weapon, but a sanctuary, a repository, a library, a living archive of universal memory, patiently waiting for the right conditions, the right key to reactivate its full potential. And I was that key. The implications were staggering. I, a 22-year-old kid who usually just pointed tourists to restrooms, was somehow connected to this cosmic purpose. Why me? How? As if in answer, the entity projected another cascade of images. I saw glimpses of my own life, not in a linear fashion, but as moments of resonance. My childhood spent in the shadow of these mountains, my innate connection to the wild places, my curiosity, my stubborn streak that pushed me to explore the unmanicured parts of the park. It wasn't just random chance that had led me to the glowing moss. It was a subtle, ancient attunement. A dormant potential within me had been activated by the object's presence, like a tuning fork resonating with a distant vibration. The tingling in my hand, I now understood, was not just residual energy. It was a nascent connection, a biological link that had been forged the moment I first touched the moss. My own unique bioenergetic signature, perhaps a specific genetic marker, had resonated with the object's frequency, marking me as a compatible interface. A key. The time is approaching, the keeper's impression continued, laced with a new urgency. The balance shifts, the veil thins, the world requires its memory. The golden light around me pulsed faster, and for the first time I felt a tremor of something other than awe. a deep, quiet concern, almost melancholy, from the keepers. It was a sense of profound responsibility, a weight that had been carried for millennia, now partially transferred to me. I was no longer just standing in a column of light. I was experiencing history, a silent dialogue with entities that spanned unimaginable eons. My mind felt stretched, expanded, capable of holding far more information than I thought possible. Yet paradoxically, I also felt grounded, tethered to this moment, to this profound purpose. The entity's shimmering form began to contract, slowly withdrawing its light tendril from my energy field. The golden column softened slightly, becoming less intense, though still vibrant. The impression of the keeper's presence began to recede, leaving behind a profound sense of peace and a clarity of purpose I'd never known. "Return to us, we will guide. You are the way." The final impression faded, leaving me standing alone within the softly glowing column of light. The opening in the alien object remained, a silent invitation, no longer emitting a forceful pull but a gentle, steady beacon. The air within the column was still clean, infused with that sweet, metallic, floral scent, but the dizzying rush had subsided, replaced by a calm resolve. I looked down at myself. My clothes were no longer dirty from digging, they seemed pristine as if the light had cleansed them. My skin felt invigorated, my mind sharp and clear. The small cuts on my arm were completely gone, leaving no trace. I felt better, stronger, lighter. This wasn't just a mental experience, it had affected me physically, energetically. Taking a deep breath, I stepped back out of the light column, onto the disturbed earth of the forest floor. The forest had grown even darker in my subjective time within the light, the last vestiges of twilight having faded. Now only the soft, ambient glow of the object illuminated the immediate clearing. The emerald moss pulsed, serene and vibrant. The violet-black metal gleamed, its etched symbols a cool, pale blue. I looked at my hand again. The tingling was still there, but it felt less like a sensation and more like an extension of my own self, a constant hum of connection. I knew with absolute certainty that I could activate the opening again. I was the key. The enormity of what had just happened settled over me. I had just communicated with an ancient, possibly alien intelligence. I had learned that a vast, sentient repository of universal knowledge lay buried beneath a regional park, and that I was somehow integral to its purpose. My life, as I knew it, was irrevocably changed. I still had a job at the park office. I still had parents, friends, a beat-up sedan, but none of it felt the same. It was all a backdrop now, a facade over a hidden reality. How could I go back to directing tourists to restrooms after this? The keepers had given me a mission, though vaguely defined. Return to us. We will guide. You are the way. It sounded simple, yet I knew it was anything but. What did I need to do? What did the time is approaching mean for my world? I looked at the small shovel and trowel lying on the ground. I had dug this trench, followed the internal command, but I couldn't just leave the opening exposed. The keepers had revealed themselves to me, trusted me with this knowledge. I had to protect it. With renewed purpose, I began to rebury the exposed section of the object. This time, as I pushed the black, ash-like earth back over the violet-black metal, it felt different. It wasn't just covering, it felt like tucking something important back into its bed. The earth readily accepted the material, almost embracing it. The glowing symbols dimmed slightly as the soil covered them, but a faint, internal luminescence still shone through the thin layer of dirt and moss. I carefully replaced the larger chunks of soil and then the fallen leaves and pine needles, camouflaging the disturbed ground. The fallen log, with its vibrant moss, remained undisturbed over the densest part of the anomaly, its green glow now the only visible hint of the secret beneath. As I finished, the intense quiet of the clearing began to recede very subtly. The ambient sounds of the night forest slowly returned, the rustle of unseen creatures, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle whisper of the wind through the pines. It was as if the immediate, powerful energy field had drawn back, leaving only a lingering presence. I retrieved my backpack. My gear, too, felt subtly different, imbued with a faint charge. I pulled out my notebook and pencil, intending to write everything down, but paused. How could I even begin to put this into words? How could I capture the essence of what I had just experienced? It felt impossible. My human language was inadequate to describe something so utterly profound and alien. Instead, I drew. I wasn't an artist, but with a sudden, unexpected clarity, I found myself sketching the symbols, the swirling patterns etched into the object's surface. I drew the central motif, the stylized eye or galaxy with its concentric rings. I sketched the light tendril, the golden column, the fluid, luminous form of the keeper. The pencil flew across the page, my hand moving with an almost independent will, guided by the fresh memories etched into my mind. I focused on the geometric precision, the organic flow, the subtle shifts in pattern and light that I had witnessed. When I finished, several pages of my notebook were filled with intricate designs, rough approximations of what I had seen. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a way to anchor the experience in my own reality. It was a personal record, a secret language between me and the truth. I packed up my gear, the headlamp illuminating my work. The night was now complete, the sky a vast, star-dusted canvas above the forest canopy. The air was cool, fresh, and still carried that faint, sweet metallic tang. I took one last look at the hidden site. The orange bandana on the gnarled oak was a small, bright flag marking the impossible. The moss glowed, a soft, emerald beacon in the darkness. It was all still there, waiting, and I knew I would be back. The hike back down the trail was different from any I had ever taken. My body was tired, my muscles still aching from the frantic digging, but my mind was alight, buzzing with a newfound energy. I walked with a lightness in my step, as if my feet barely touched the ground. The forest, once familiar then alien, now felt like a part of me, a vast, interconnected organism in which I now played a small yet significant role. The distant rumblings of thunder I had heard earlier had intensified. A storm was brewing, a fitting backdrop to the monumental shift in my life. I reached my car just as the first fat drops of rain began to fall, splattering on the windshield. I started the engine, the roar of the old sedan a reassuringly mundane sound, but even the familiarity of my car felt altered. I was no longer the same person who had driven up here hours ago. I was something more, something other. The drive home was a blur. The highway lights seemed dimmer, the familiar landscape less real. My mind was still replaying the encounter, trying to process the flood of information, the profound implications. You are a key. You are the way. I knew I couldn't just pretend this hadn't happened. I couldn't go back to my old life. But what was my new life? What did a key do? How did one become the way? The keepers had given me an invitation, a purpose, but no instruction manual. The rain turned into a downpour by the time I pulled into my driveway. I hurried inside, the cold, wet air a stark contrast to the golden warmth I had experienced. I shucked off my wet clothes, the faint metallic scent still clinging to them. My skin still tingled, a constant reminder. My parents were asleep. I crept to my room, showered quickly, scrubbing away the last traces of forest dirt, but the feeling of connection, the expanded awareness, remained. I pulled on a clean t-shirt and jeans, feeling like a stranger in my own skin. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind raced, replaying the images, the feelings, the profound sense of destiny. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the ordinary world outside my window with the extraordinary reality I had discovered. The next few days at the park office were surreal. I moved through my routine like a ghost, answering questions about trail difficulty and bear safety, all the while a vast, ancient secret thrummed beneath my skin. My colleagues, oblivious, chatted about their weekends, about upcoming park events. I felt utterly disconnected, living in a parallel dimension of my own making. I continued my research in the back office, but now my focus had a tangible target. I looked for anything, however obscure, that might relate to ancient buried structures, unusual energy signatures, or thin places in folklore. I delved into geological records again, not for anomalies, but for specific formations that might conceal something massive. I looked at old maps, tracing faint lines that might indicate forgotten routes to the North Ridge. My search yielded nothing concrete, but it fueled my sense of purpose. The park was my cover, my base of operations, and my new mission was to understand the keepers, the object, and my role as the key. I realized I couldn't operate completely alone, not for long. The scale of this discovery was too vast, but I still didn't know who to trust. The keepers hadn't given me any guidelines for this. We will guide, they had said, but that guidance had been subtle, intuitive. I needed more. One evening after work, I found myself sitting in my car, parked at an overlook that offered a distant view of the North Ridge. The sun was setting, painting the jagged peaks in hues of gold and purple. It looked majestic, serene, holding its secrets close. I closed my eyes, focusing on the tingling in my hand, on the faint internal hum that now felt like a part of my own heartbeat. I tried to reconnect, to feel the keeper's presence, to ask for guidance. For a long moment there was nothing but the sound of the wind. Then a subtle shift, not words, not images, but a distinct impression, a gentle nudge in my mind. It was a feeling, a resonance, a name. Elias Thorne. The name echoed in my thoughts, unfamiliar yet strangely resonant. Elias Thorne. Who was that? Was it a person, a place, a concept? I opened my eyes, a jolt of surprise running through me. The keepers were guiding me, just not in a way I had anticipated. I immediately pulled out my phone, despite the limited signal, and searched the name. Nothing. Elias Thorne. It was too generic, too common, or perhaps too obscure. No immediate hits related to the park or anything remotely mystical. I spent the rest of the evening and the next few days during my breaks researching Elias Thorne. I tried different spellings, added keywords like park, archaeology, unexplained phenomena. Eventually, after countless dead ends, a very old digitized newspaper article from a dusty online archive popped up. The headline was sensationalized, typical of tabloid journalism from the 1970s. Local professor vanishes on mystical quest in North Ridge wilderness. My heart hammered. Elias Thorne, professor, mystical quest, North Ridge. It all clicked into place with an unnerving precision. The article detailed the disappearance of Dr. Elias Thorne, a respected but eccentric anthropology professor from a local university, who had vanished without a trace almost 50 years ago while conducting field research in the North Ridge area. He had been known for his unconventional theories about ancient civilizations and their possible connections to extraterrestrial phenomena, often dismissed by his peers as pseudoscience. The article mentioned he was last seen heading towards an uncharted section of the North Ridge, speaking of ley lines and cosmic alignments. This was it. This was the guidance. The keepers hadn't just given me a name, they had given me a lead, a potential ally, or at least a path to understanding. Thorn had been looking for something similar, or perhaps the very same thing. He might have even found it. I immediately shifted my research focus. I delved into the university archives looking for anything related to Dr. Thorn. It was challenging, as most of his work had been effectively buried by the academic community after his controversial disappearance. But I persevered, driven by the keeper's subtle influence and my own burgeoning curiosity. I found remnants of his research papers, obscure journals, and even old student testimonials. He wasn't just an eccentric, he was a brilliant, if unorthodox, mind. He had theories about certain geological formations acting as energy conduits, and about specific nodes in the Earth's magnetic field that could facilitate communication with non-terrestrial intelligences. He spoke of ancient myths and legends from around the world that hinted at hidden gateways and star seeds embedded in the Earth. It was all strikingly similar to what I had experienced. One particular student testimonial caught my eye. A former student of Thorn S., a Ms. Anya Sharma, had written a passionate defense of his work, claiming he was misunderstood and that his theories held profound truths. The testimonial was from decades ago, but it included a mention of her continuing his research after his disappearance. She was a doctoral candidate at the time, specializing in comparative mythology and archaeoastronomy. If anyone knew more about Thorn or had picked up his trail, it would be her. I found a current university faculty directory online. Anya Sharma, Professor Emeritus, Department of Anthropology. She was still there, an active, if retired, figure. A ripple of excitement mixed with apprehension ran through me. This was it, my first real step beyond the solitude of my own discovery. The idea of approaching a university professor, a renowned academic, about a buried alien object and telepathic light beings felt utterly absurd. She would think I was insane. But the keeper's presence, that subtle hum within me, gave me courage. They had led me to her. There had to be a reason. I drafted an email, then deleted it, then redrafted it a dozen times. How do you explain the impossible to someone who might have been dismissed as eccentric for believing in the impossible herself? I settled on a cautious approach, hinting at unusual geological findings in the North Ridge and mentioning Dr. Thorn's theories, hoping to pique her interest without revealing too much too soon. I sent the email, my heart pounding like a drum. The waiting was excruciating. Every notification on my phone sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Days passed. No reply. Had she ignored it, dismissed it as a crank email? Just as I was about to give up hope, an email appeared in my inbox from Anya Sharma. My hands trembled as I opened it. The email was short, formal, but carried an underlying current of intense curiosity. Your inquiry regarding Dr. Thorn and the North Ridge has caught my attention, it read. While I rarely engage in unsolicited correspondence, your specific mention of unusual geological findings is intriguing. Dr. Thorn's work, though controversial, was deeply rooted in observation. I would be willing to meet for a brief discussion. My office, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Come alone. And bring whatever findings you believe are relevant. Tuesday, my next day off. It felt like fate. and the warning, "Come alone," suggested she was no stranger to discretion, perhaps even secrecy. She understood the delicate nature of such things. I felt a surge of validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. There was someone else who might understand, someone who had walked a similar path decades ago. The days leading up to Tuesday were a whirlwind of preparation. What could I bring as relevant findings? My sketches? A sample of the moss? No, a sample of the moss was too risky, too revealing. The sketches, perhaps, but even they felt inadequate. The keeper's presence was my most compelling evidence, but how could I convey that? I decided to bring my notebook with the sketches and a small, sealed bag containing a minuscule amount of the black, ash-like material I had scraped off the object during my second visit. It was subtle, unobtrusive, but tangible. If she had studied Thorn, she might recognize its significance. Tuesday arrived, crisp and clear. I dressed in my cleanest clothes, trying to look presentable, professional, but feeling like a nervous teenager going to an important job interview. The tingling in my hand, the hum in my chest was more pronounced today, almost buzzing with anticipation. I drove to the university, a sprawling campus of brick buildings and manicured lawns. Professor Sharma's office was in an old, quiet wing of the anthropology department, tucked away on the third floor. The hallway was lined with dusty display cases filled with artifacts, pottery shards, ancient tools, faded photographs of archaeological digs. It all felt so mundane, so academic, in contrast to the cosmic reality I now carried. I found her office door. Prof. A. Sharma read a simple brass plaque. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it. I knocked, a moment of silence, then a clear, firm voice from within said, "Enter." I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The office was exactly what I would have imagined, cluttered with books, papers, maps, and exotic artifacts. A faint smell of old paper and incense hung in the air. Behind a large, antique desk sat a woman who, despite her age, had an undeniable intensity in her eyes. Her hair, once probably dark, was now a striking silver, pulled back in a severe bun. She wore round spectacles perched on her nose, and her gaze, when it met mine, was sharp, intelligent, and deeply assessing. She looked every bit the formidable academic, but there was a flicker in her eyes, a hint of something more, something that resonated with the hidden knowledge I now possessed. "Mr. My last name, I presume," she said, her voice gravelly but clear. She gestured to the worn leather chair opposite her desk. "Please sit." I sat, my backpack clutched tightly in my lap. "Yes, Professor, thank you for seeing me." She leaned forward, her silver hair catching the light from the window. "You mentioned Dr. Thorne and unusual geological findings in the North Ridge. These are not common topics of inquiry, especially from someone in your current profession." Her eyes twinkled, a hint of amusement there. "So tell me, what exactly brings you here?" I took another deep breath, trying to steady my racing pulse. "Professor Sharma, what I'm about to tell you, it's going to sound impossible, but I assure you, it's real." She simply nodded, her expression unreadable. "I've heard impossible things before, young man. Dr. Thorne built a career on them, so please speak freely." Emboldened by her calm demeanor, I began my story, starting from that fateful Tuesday morning, the shimmering moss, the sudden silence, the strange scent. I described the jolt, the fleeting visions, the underlying metallic object. I spoke of Bill's warning about the North Ridge being thin. I detailed my return, the direct mental command to dig, the symbols, the opening, the column of golden light, and finally the entity. As I spoke, Professor Sharma listened intently, her eyes never leaving mine. She didn't interrupt, didn't scoff, didn't even shift in her seat. Her composure was remarkable, almost unsettling. I watched for any sign of disbelief, but found none. Instead, I saw a growing intensity in her gaze, a flicker of recognition. When I recounted the keeper's message, "Welcome, you have found us, you are a key," her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. And when I finished with my description of the entity's final impression, "Return to us. We will guide. You are the way," she leaned back slowly in her chair, a long, contemplative sigh escaping her lips. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of an old grandfather clock in the corner of the office. "A key," she murmured, almost to herself. "So he finally found one." She looked at me, a profound sadness in her eyes. "Or rather, it found you." My heart leaped. You believe me?" She gave a faint, wry smile. "Believe you, my dear boy, I've spent 50 years waiting for someone to walk into my office with a story like yours." Dr. Thorne theorized extensively about the keys. He believed certain individuals possessed a unique bioresonance, a genetic predisposition that would allow them to interface with the source. He called them the luminaries. You, it seems, are a luminary, a key. The first one he managed to identify, however indirectly, in this region. She paused, then added, "My theory, which built upon his, was that these sources, as he called them, were not merely power conduits, but vast conscious archives, sentinels of cosmic memory, and that they lay dormant, scattered across various planets, waiting for a specific confluence of events or a specific genetic signature to awaken." I was stunned. She didn't just believe me, she understood. She had the language for it, the context. "I found a newspaper article about Dr. Thorne's disappearance," I ventured. "It said he was looking for ley lines and cosmic alignments in the North Ridge." "Indeed," she confirmed, a hint of steel in her voice. "He wasn't mad, as the university's official narrative would have you believe. He was ahead of his time. He was tracking anomalies, shifts in electromagnetic field, subtle energy fluctuations in that region for years. He believed he was close to locating one of these sources. The North Ridge, he claimed, was a particularly potent node on the planet's energy grid." She tapped a finger on her desk. "He vanished shortly after sending me a cryptic letter, speaking of a verdant glow and a silent hum emanating from an ancient slumber." A verdant glow, a silent hum, my moss. Thorne had found it too, or at least he had been on its trail. "What do you think happened to him?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. Professor Sharma looked out the window, her gaze distant. He was brilliant, but perhaps too eager, too alone. He sought to awaken it prematurely, without the proper interface, without the key. I suspect the source in its slumbering state simply absorbed him, not maliciously, but as a defense mechanism, or perhaps as a way to integrate him into its own vast consciousness. She looked back at me, her gaze piercing. "You, on the other hand, are the key. You were invited." "There's a fundamental difference." I felt a fresh wave of dread. Thorne had been absorbed. The peaceful dizziness I had felt, the sense of melding with the entity. What if I had been close to the same fate, had the keepers not explicitly identified me as a key? "But why me?" I asked, the question still nagging at me. "How am I a key?" Dr. Thorne believed it was a genetic marker, a specific resonance passed down through certain bloodlines, or perhaps arising spontaneously under particular environmental influences, she explained. He theorized that the source needing to reactivate would subtly influence its surroundings, pushing compatible individuals towards it. a kind of cosmic homing beacon. You grew up here, yes, in the shadow of those mountains. Yes, I confirmed, remembering my childhood, the constant backdrop of the peaks. Exactly, proximity, an innate attunement to the land, a particular curiosity. She gave a small smile. You fit the profile, your description of the subtle guidance, the mental impressions, that's how it operates. It doesn't command, it guides. It resonates with your own inclinations, drawing you in. The object told me the time is approaching, I said, recalling the keeper's warning. What does that mean? Professor Sharma's expression grew serious. That young man is the most crucial question. Dr. Thorne believed these sources were essential to the balance of life, acting as repositories and perhaps even generators of vital universal information. He theorized that when a planet or a civilization reached a certain tipping point, a crisis of consciousness, an environmental catastrophe, a technological singularity, the sources would awaken to offer guidance, to return the world its memory, as you put it. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the clutter of her office. Look around you. Our world is teetering on the brink. Climate change, political polarization, global instability, a growing sense of existential dread. We are facing unprecedented challenges. It seems the source believes humanity is nearing a point where it desperately needs that memory, that ancient wisdom, to navigate its future. A wave of responsibility washed over me, heavier than anything I had felt before. This wasn't just a personal adventure, it was about the fate of the world. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The keepers told me to return and that I am the way, but I don't know what that means. Professor Sharma picked up a heavy, leather-bound book from her desk, its pages yellowed with age. That, I believe, is where my research and Dr. Thorne's legacy can finally be put to use. He amassed a vast amount of information, not just about the sources themselves, but about similar ancient gateways and sacred sites found across various cultures. He believed these were all manifestations of the same underlying universal network. She opened the book, revealing intricate diagrams, ancient glyphs, and detailed notes in Thorne's elegant, looping handwriting. He spent years trying to decipher their purpose, their function. He was convinced that there was a protocol, a series of interactions or activations required to fully engage with the source and access its memory. A protocol, I repeated, intrigued. Yes, not a password, but a sequence of resonant acts, perhaps even specific mental states. He believed that the key was not just for opening the door, but for operating the entire system. You, as the luminary, are meant to be the conduit, the bridge between the source and our world. She looked at me intently. This is why you were sent to me. Dr. Thorne's work is the instruction manual you need. The keepers, or whatever intelligence is embodied by the source, want you to understand. She leaned forward, her expression alight with a fierce, scholarly passion. They have chosen you, young man, because you are open. Her words hung in the air, a profound truth settling deep within me. I was open. Open to the impossible, open to the unseen, open to a destiny I couldn't have imagined a week ago. This wasn't just about unlocking a door. It was about being the living connection, the interface between two realities. Professor Sharma closed the heavy book, placing her hands flat on its ancient cover. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. Dr. Thorne believed that the sources communicate in layers. The initial impressions, the guiding nudges, are just the first step. To truly access its memory, its wisdom, requires a more deliberate, resonant interaction, a protocol, and it requires you. She leaned back slightly, a thoughtful expression on her face. His work suggests that the key isn't just a genetic predisposition, but a state of being. It's about maintaining that openness, that sensitivity to its subtle guidance, and actively participating in the process. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. So, what's the protocol? I asked, my voice hushed. What do I need to do? She gave a faint smile, a spark of scholarly excitement in her eyes. That, Mr. My last name, is what we need to figure out together. Thorne left behind a wealth of fragmented notes, theories, and observational data. He spent years cross-referencing ancient myths, studying forgotten languages, and analyzing geological and astronomical patterns, all in an attempt to deduce this protocol. He believed it was tied to natural cycles, celestial alignments, and even specific states of human consciousness. She pushed the old book across the desk towards me. Its cover was embossed with a faded, intricate symbol, a swirling pattern reminiscent of the one etched on the buried object. My hand tingled as I reached for it. This is his magnum opus, incomplete though it may be. He called it the Luminaries Codex. It contains his synthesized theories, his hypotheses about the source's nature, and his attempts to piece together the activation sequence. Many of the symbols you described, the patterns of light, the very essence of your experience, he documented them, often with remarkable accuracy, despite never having physically opened the source himself. I opened the codex carefully. The pages were filled with Thorne's elegant, precise handwriting, interspersed with his own intricate drawings. My own sketches, still in my backpack, seemed crude by comparison. There were diagrams of stellar constellations, geological maps overlaid with glowing lines, and abstract symbols that made my head spin. It was like looking into a brilliant but utterly alien mind. He suspected there were several stages to the activation, Professor Sharma continued, each stage building upon the last, progressively unlocking deeper levels of access and interaction. He believed the initial opening you performed was merely the preliminary greeting sequence, establishing the link between you and the source. And the next stage, I prompted, my mind racing. He hypothesized it involved a form of resonant attunement, a deep meditative connection, perhaps aided by specific natural elements or even specific sonic frequencies. He believed the source communicated not just through direct mental impressions, but through patterns, vibrations, and harmonics. She paused, then added, he also warned about the inherent dangers of attempting to force the process or approach it with improper intent. The source, he believed, was not a weapon to be wielded, but a vast, living library to be engaged with reverence and understanding. I remembered the gentle yet firm pressure of the dig command. It wasn't forceful, but an invitation. I remembered the peaceful dizziness, the sense of communion. It wasn't about control, it was about resonance. Did he ever describe what the source actually does? I asked, beyond being a repository of memory. He believed it was an active participant in planetary evolution, Professor Sharma explained, not as a direct manipulator but as a subtle guide, providing insights, nudging developing civilizations towards certain discoveries, offering solutions to existential threats through its stored knowledge. He spoke of it as a cosmic gardener, ensuring the flourishing of intelligent life, seeding it with the necessary wisdom at critical junctures. And my role as the way. The way, she echoed thoughtfully, is perhaps the most profound part. If you are the key that opens the door and operates the system, then you are also the conduit through which its wisdom flows to humanity. You are the interpreter, the bridge. It's a tremendous responsibility, young man, far more than just discovering a buried artifact. I felt the weight of that responsibility settle on my shoulders, heavier than any backpack I'd ever carried. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly humbling. So, where do we start? I asked, looking at the formidable tome on the desk. Professor Sharma's eyes held a glint of determination. We start by delving into this. We meticulously reconstruct Thorne's theories, cross-reference them with your experiences, and try to deduce the next step in the protocol. We analyze every symbol, every diagram, every cryptic note. This will be a slow, painstaking process, and it will require absolute secrecy. Secrecy. Of course, she said, her voice firm. Do you imagine the military or certain powerful organizations would allow a discovery of this magnitude to remain in private hands? Do you think the academic establishment would welcome a vindication of Thorne's pseudoscience after decades of dismissal? No, Mr. My Last Name. The world is not ready for this, not yet. And until we understand its full implications, its power, and how to safely engage with it, it must remain our secret. Thorne learned that lesson the hard way. Her words were a stark reminder of Thorne's fate, so no one else knows. Only a very select few in hushed whispers and paranoid speculation, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. The official explanation for Thorne's disappearance still stands, and it must continue to, for your safety and for the safety of the source itself. We cannot risk it being exploited or misunderstood by those who lack the reverence it demands. I nodded, fully understanding. This wasn't just my secret anymore, it was our secret. Your job at the park, she continued, will provide excellent cover, regular hours, regular presence. It allows you to maintain access to the North Ridge without drawing undue suspicion. We will need to devise a schedule for your visits to the source and for our meetings here. I can dedicate my retired hours to this. It's what I've been waiting for. A plan, however daunting, was forming. It felt good to have a concrete direction and a brilliant mind like Professor Sharma's guiding me through the intellectual labyrinth Thorne had created. Professor, I began, remembering something. When I was inside the light, I felt transformed. My cuts healed. I felt invigorated, and the tingling in my hand, it's constant now. She studied my hand intently, then gently took it in hers, her touch surprisingly warm and soft. Her thumb brushed across my palm where the tingling was most intense. The source is bioenergetic, she murmured. It interacts with living systems. Thorne hypothesized that prolonged resonant exposure would indeed have subtle regenerative effects on a luminary. It's attuning your physiology, preparing you for deeper integration. It's not just a mental connection, it's a physical, energetic one. Consider it a symbiotic relationship beginning to form. I pulled out the small, sealed bag containing the black, ash-like material. I brought this. I scraped it off the object. Professor Sharma took the bag, her eyes narrowing as she examined the dark, fine particles. She opened it slightly, inhaling the faint, sweet metallic scent. A flicker of recognition crossed her face. Interesting, she said almost to herself. Thorne once mentioned a chthonic residue found near ancient sites, describing it as earth transformed by unseen energies. He believed it was a byproduct of the source's influence on the surrounding geological strata. This is a direct sample. It provides further validation if I needed any. She carefully set the bag aside. For now, Mr. My Last Name, she said, looking directly at me, our immediate task is to familiarize you with Thorne's work. You need to understand the principles, the theoretical framework, before you attempt anything else. It's not enough to be the key. You must understand how the lock works. I want you to take this codex. She pushed the heavy book further towards me. Read it, absorb it, make notes. Highlight anything that resonates with your experience. We will meet again next Tuesday, same time, same place. Be prepared to discuss your insights. I carefully picked up the codex. It was heavy, both literally and figuratively. A universe of knowledge, a lifetime of a brilliant man's obsession, now resting in my hands. Thank you, Professor, I said, my voice filled with a gratitude that felt inadequate. Don't thank me, young man, she replied, a rare, genuine smile gracing her lips. Thank Dr. Thorne, he did the hard part. We simply have the privilege of finishing his work, and thank the Source for choosing us. Now go and remember absolute discretion. I left her office, the heavy codex tucked securely in my backpack, feeling a mixture of profound excitement and daunting responsibility. The world outside, the bustling university campus, the mundane reality of traffic and lectures felt utterly distant, a mere illusion. My real life, my true purpose, lay hidden in the pages of this ancient book and beneath the roots of the North Ridge. The next week was a blur of intense study. I devoured Thorne's codex, poring over his intricate theories, his meticulous diagrams, his elegant prose. It was challenging, dense material, blending anthropology, astrophysics, geology, and ancient mysticism into a coherent, albeit unorthodox, framework. But the more I read, the more the pieces clicked into place. My own experiences at the source provided the living context, the experiential validation that Thorne himself had lacked. He had written extensively about the luminaries, describing them as individuals with a heightened sensitivity to subtle energy fields, a natural resonance with the source's frequency. He believed their presence alone could influence the source and that their consciousness was integral to its activation. He even speculated about the key being a multi-generational trait passed down through subtle genetic markers, hinting at a long-term plan by the sources to re-engage with humanity. He described the source as a biocrystalline intelligence, a vast, interconnected network of specialized crystals and organic matter, capable of storing immense amounts of data and interacting with living consciousness. The moss, he theorized, was a specialized biointerface, an organic antenna extending the source's presence to the surface. He had even drawn incredibly accurate depictions of the violet black metal, referring to it as obdurium, a material with impossible density and unique energetic properties. His protocol was indeed complex, outlined in a series of numbered harmonic stages. The greeting sequence I had performed was stage 1. Stage 2, the resonant attunement, involved a prolonged period of focused meditation and energetic alignment with the source, typically performed during specific celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, or major lunar cycles, which Thorne believed amplified the source's energetic output. He hypothesized that these alignments were not just astrological curiosities, but periods when the Earth's natural energy grid, and thus the source's connection to it, was particularly potent. He had even identified several dates in the near future that would be ideal for such an attunement, marking them in his notes with cryptic symbols. As I absorbed Thorne's work, I began to see the world differently. The mountains, the forests, the stars above, they were not just inert landscapes, but a vast, interconnected energy system, pulsing with unseen forces. My perception felt sharper, my senses more attuned. The constant tingling in my hand and the hum in my chest were no longer mere sensations. They were a living connection, a constant dialogue with the hidden truth. I continued my work at the park, but with a new internal focus. I kept the codex hidden, reading it discreetly whenever I had a moment of privacy. Bill, the old ranger, noticed my quiet demeanor. "You've been mighty pensive lately, kid," he commented one afternoon, leaning against the counter. "Northridge still giving you the spooks?" I managed a faint smile. "Something like that, Bill, just a lot to think about." He grunted, his eyes twinkling. "That's good. Thinking's a healthy pastime. Just don't think yourself right off a cliff up there, eh?" His casual words, once a simple warning, now carried a deeper, more ironic weight. I wasn't just thinking, I was unearthing cosmic truths, preparing for contact with ancient intelligences. And the cliff I was teetering on was far more profound than any physical precipice. Tuesday arrived bright and clear. I walked into Professor Sharma's office, the codex clutched in my hand, feeling like a seasoned initiate rather than a nervous novice. "Ah, Mr. My last name," she greeted me, a knowing look in her eyes. "You look enlightened. I take it you've made progress with Dr. Thorne's work." "More than progress, Professor," I said, setting the codex on her desk. "It's like he wrote the instruction manual for my experience. Everything he theorized, I've seen or felt." I spent the next 2 hours detailing my insights, cross-referencing my experiences with Thorne's text. We discussed the nature of the luminaries, the biocrystalline intelligence, and the deeper implications of the Source's cosmic gardener role. Professor Sharma listened intently, occasionally interjecting with her own accumulated knowledge, filling in gaps or offering alternative interpretations. "Your account confirms much of what Thorne hypothesized," she said, her expression thoughtful. "Especially your description of the entity as keepers, observing and preserving. He believed they were the collective consciousness of the Source, a vast, ancient mind that had witnessed countless epochs." We eventually turned to stage 2, the resonant attunement. Thorne believed this stage was crucial for establishing a deeper, more stable connection, Professor Sharma explained. "It's about opening a two-way channel, allowing you to not only receive information from the Source, but to actively interface with its systems." He speculated it might even allow for a form of conscious navigation within its archives. "How is it done?" I asked, eager for specifics. She pointed to a diagram in the codex, a complex mandala-like structure filled with symbols that looked strangely familiar, echoing the patterns on the Source's surface. Thorne believed it involved focused meditation at the Source during a specific celestial alignment. The symbols, he theorized, were resonant keys, energetic foci meant to aid in concentration and alignment. He also suggested the use of specific sonic frequencies to help induce the necessary meditative state. The sonic frequencies. Yes, ancient cultures often used chanting, drumming, or specific musical instruments in their rituals to induce altered states of consciousness. Thorne believed these were not arbitrary, but were designed to resonate with the Earth's natural frequencies, and by extension, with the Source itself. He spent years analyzing ancient musical scales and the acoustical properties of sacred sites. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, metallic tuning fork. He even designed a set of these, tuned to what he believed were the fundamental harmonics of the Source. He never got to use them himself. She handed me one. It was cool and heavy in my hand, subtly vibrating with a faint energy that resonated with my tingling palm. "There's an upcoming celestial event," I said, remembering Thorne's marked dates. "A full moon coinciding with a minor meteor shower in 3 weeks. Professor Sharma's eyes lit up. Excellent. That would provide a potent energetic window. Thorne emphasized the importance of full moons, believing their gravitational pull and reflective light amplified the source's energies. What about the actual attunement? I asked. What would I be doing? Based on Thorne's notes, she explained, you would position yourself directly within the source's energy field, meaning at the opened gateway. You would focus on the glowing symbols, allowing their patterns to guide your mind. The sonic frequencies from the tuning fork, or perhaps even a recording of specific ancient chants Thorne documented, would help entrain your brainwaves to the source's rhythm. The goal is to achieve a profound state of conscious resonance, where your mind and the source's systems become deeply interlinked. It sounded like a mystical experience, a scientific experiment, and a dangerous dive into the unknown all rolled into one. Are there any dangers with this stage? I asked, remembering Thorne's fate. Professor Sharma's expression grew serious. Always, if the resonance is incomplete or if you approach it with an unbalanced mind, the source could perceive it as an intrusion rather than an invitation. Thorne, in his early, less refined attempts, experienced significant disorientation, hallucinations, and even temporary loss of his own memories. He learned the hard way that one must be completely open, but also grounded and clear-minded. You must approach it with a mind free of fear, anger, or greed, only pure intent. And the risk of being absorbed, I asked, the word feeling heavy on my tongue. Less so now, given you've already been recognized as the key, she clarified, but still present if you force the connection. The source is a vast intelligence. It would be like trying to grasp a galaxy with your bare hands. It requires respect, patience, and a willingness to surrender your individual ego to the greater flow of information. We spent the rest of the afternoon outlining a plan. For the next 3 weeks, I would practice meditation techniques, focusing on achieving deep states of mental clarity and openness. I would study Thorne's notes on specific sonic frequencies, familiarizing myself with the subtle patterns of vibration. Professor Sharma would provide me with recordings of these frequencies, along with additional historical context for the symbols and rituals Thorne had documented. You need to approach this not just as a ranger or even a scientist, she told me, her voice firm. You need to approach it as a modern-day shaman, a bridge between worlds. You are not just observing, you are participating. You are becoming a part of something ancient and immense. Before I left, she gave me a small, carefully sealed vial. This is a concentrated extract of a rare, high-altitude moss Thorne discovered. He believed it possessed unique psychoactive properties that could enhance mental clarity and promote resonant states without the disorienting effects of conventional hallucinogens. He called it Viridian Sapientia, green wisdom. Take a few drops an hour before your attunement. It will help prepare your mind. I looked at the vial, then at the tuning fork, then at the codex. My backpack felt heavier than ever, laden with the tools of an entirely new reality. Over the next 3 weeks, my life underwent a subtle yet profound transformation. My daily routine at the park office became a meditative practice. I moved with deliberate calm, my mind constantly attuned to the subtle energies around me. I spent my evenings practicing deep breathing and visualization exercises, aiming to quiet my mind and open my consciousness. I listened to the specific sonic frequencies Professor Sharma had provided, complex, layered tones that subtly shifted my perception, inducing a feeling of profound calm and expansion. The tingling in my hand grew stronger, a constant, comforting presence. I felt more connected to the forest, to the mountains, to the earth itself. My senses were heightened. I noticed details I'd never perceived before: the intricate patterns on a leaf, the subtle shifts in bird song, the faint scent of rain before it fell. It was as if the source was already preparing me, subtly recalibrating my perception of reality. Professor Sharma and I met twice more during this period. She guided me through Thorne's more esoteric theories, explaining the astronomical significance of certain alignments and the anthropological roots of the symbols. She cautioned me against fear, urging me to embrace the unknown with a sense of wonder and respect. "Remember, Mr. My last name," she stressed during our last meeting. "The source is not testing you. It is inviting you. Approach it not as a challenge, but as a conversation. Listen, observe, allow yourself to be guided." The night of the full moon arrived, clear and cold, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. The meteor shower, though minor, was predicted to be visible after midnight, adding another layer of celestial energy to the night. I had carefully planned my schedule, telling my parents I was going on an overnight camping trip with a friend. I packed my backpack, my headlamp, first aid kit, water, snacks, the tuning fork, the vial of Viridian Sapientia, and Thorne's Codex. The Codex felt like a shield, a map, a comfort. As I drove towards the North Ridge pull-off, the full moon, a luminous orb in the ink-black sky, cast an ethereal glow over the landscape. The mountains loomed, majestic and mysterious, holding their ancient secret. I felt no fear, only a profound sense of anticipation, a calm resolve that had settled deep within my being. I parked my car, extinguished the lights, and stepped out into the silent, moonlit forest. The air was cold, invigorating. I took a deep breath, focusing on the hum in my chest, the tingling in my hand. This was it. The hike to the source felt different this time. The path was illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the bare branches, creating dancing shadows that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. My steps were light, purposeful. The forest felt alive, observing, waiting. I reached the clearing, and there it was, the fallen log, and at its base the emerald moss, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence under the moonlight. The hum was stronger now, a deep, resonant frequency that vibrated through the earth, a silent invitation. I set down my backpack and knelt beside the moss. I took out the vial of Viridian Sapientia, carefully opened it, and placed a few drops on my tongue. It was tasteless, yet I immediately felt a subtle shift, a heightened clarity in my perception. My mind felt incredibly sharp, yet profoundly peaceful. Then I took out the tuning fork. I held it in my hand, feeling its subtle energy, then tapped it gently against the violet-black surface of the reburied object. The sound was pure, a sustained, resonant tone that seemed to cut through the stillness of the night. It felt like a calling, an activation. The moss pulsed brighter, mirroring the sound. The ground beneath me thrummed with renewed energy. I placed my tingling palm over the central symbol, the stylized eye galaxy, just as I had before. The experience was immediate, overwhelming, yet controlled. The hum intensified, filling not just my body, but the entire clearing. The moss flared, a dazzling emerald explosion of light. The symbols beneath my hand burned an incandescent white. And then, with that same soft, organic sigh, the rectangular section of the violet-black metal retracted inwards. The column of golden light erupted, pure and ethereal, reaching for the moonlit sky. It pulsed with a gentle rhythm, radiating warmth and that sweet, metallic, floral scent that now felt like home. Within the golden column, the formless, luminous entity coalesced, its tendril of light extending, inviting the keepers. I felt no fear, only reverence. I took a deep breath, and with the tuning fork still resonating faintly in my hand, I stepped back into the column of golden light. This time, the sensation was less disorienting, more familiar. My body didn't dissolve as completely. Instead, it felt like my energy field was expanding, merging seamlessly with the light. My mind sharpened to an impossible degree, yet remained profoundly calm. The Viridian Sapientia hummed in my consciousness, a gentle amplifier. The entity of light surrounded me, not touching but enveloping. The tendril of light wove into my own energy, establishing the profound, non-physical communion again. But this time, it was different. It felt like an upgrade, a deeper connection. Welcome, luminary, the impression resonated in my mind, a chorus of ancient voices, clear and resonant. The attunement begins. Open yourself to the harmonics. I closed my eyes, focusing on the hum of the source, on the rhythmic pulse of the golden light, on the subtle vibrations of the tuning fork still held in my hand. I allowed my consciousness to expand, to reach out, to merge. Images, sensations, and pure information flooded my mind, but in a far more organized, comprehensible way than before. It wasn't a chaotic torrent, but a structured flow, like accessing a vast, living database. I saw patterns of energy flowing through the earth, connecting the source to other points around the globe, other sources, perhaps. I saw the Earth's magnetic field not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing entity, interacting with the source's own energetic output. Then the focus shifted inward into the source itself. I felt myself navigating its vast internal architecture, the network of glowing patterns, the intricate circuitry made of pure energy. It was like a colossal, multidimensional library, its shelves filled with the accumulated wisdom of countless civilizations, countless eons. The Keeper's presence, that collective consciousness, became clearer, more defined. They were not individuals, but a vast, interconnected mind, observing, preserving, waiting. They were a living history, a cosmic memory. The balance shifts, their impression resonated again with a new, subtle urgency. The discord grows, humanity approaches the precipice. I felt a profound sense of sadness and ancient sorrow emanating from the Keepers. They had witnessed this before, countless times across countless worlds, the cycle of brilliance and self-destruction. You are the way, they reminded me, the bridge, the interpreter. You must retrieve the necessary memory. You must guide. What memory? I mentally asked, my thoughts forming a clear query within the communion. What guidance does humanity need? The answer came not in words, but in a cascade of images. I saw glimpses of Earth's past, not just human history, but the deep history of the planet. Vast ice ages, volcanic eruptions, the slow, majestic dance of continents. Then I saw humanity's rapid ascent, the explosion of technology, the exponential growth of population, the increasing strain on the planet's resources. I saw the burgeoning conflicts, the environmental degradation, the growing spiritual disconnect. And then I saw a possible future, a future of environmental collapse, social breakdown, and conflict on a global scale. A bleak vision that sent a shiver through my expanded consciousness. But interwoven with that bleakness, I saw threads of hope, alternative paths, solutions, technologies, and philosophies that had been overlooked, forgotten, or suppressed. Sustainable energy systems, advanced ecological regeneration techniques, new paradigms of social organization, profound insights into the nature of consciousness and spirituality. These were not alien concepts, they were human potentials, possibilities that had been lost or never fully realized. The source was not offering alien technology for human consumption. It was offering memory, the memory of what humanity could be, what it had been in its potential, and the forgotten wisdom needed to navigate its current crisis. The memory of unity the keepers impressed upon me, the memory of balance, the memory of sustainability. These are the keys to survival. I felt a new, more specific pressure, a gentle nudge within the vast informational flow. It was like being directed to a particular section of a colossal library. Thorne's conscious navigation within the archives. I felt myself being drawn towards specific patterns, specific nodes within the source's intricate network. I understood without words that the protocol wasn't just about opening the source, but about intelligently querying it, and that my role as the luminary was to articulate these queries, to act as the conscious interface, the seeker. My mind, amplified by the Viridian sapientia and the source's energy, felt capable of incredible processing. I could grasp complex concepts, visualize intricate systems, and understand the deep interconnectedness of everything. The meteor shower had begun. I felt it, not just saw it. Streaks of energy burning through the atmosphere, adding a cosmic layer to the already potent energy field. The golden column around me pulsed in sync with the celestial dance. The attunement deepens, the keeper's impression resonated. The way is open, you are becoming the bridge. I felt my connection to the source becoming more profound, more integral. It was no longer just me interacting with it, it was me being it in a small, localized way. My consciousness felt merged with the ancient wisdom, an ocean of knowledge flowing through a small human vessel. Then slowly, subtly, the entity began to withdraw its tendril of light. The golden column softened, its intense warmth receding, though the peaceful feeling remained. The flow of information began to slow, to consolidate rather than overwhelm. Return, integrate, then we will guide the next step. The impression faded, leaving me standing alone once again within the gently glowing column of light. The opening in the violet-black object remained, a silent invitation, a doorway to the infinite. I stepped back out of the light onto the forest floor. The meteor shower continued overhead, silent streaks of light across the moonlit sky. The air was crisp, charged with energy, and that sweet, metallic, floral scent was still strong. I looked at my hands. The tingling was now a constant, almost imperceptible hum, an extension of my own nervous system. I felt incredibly calm, centered, and profoundly energized, despite the hours I had spent in deep attunement. My mind was clear, organized, filled with an incredible wealth of information, yet without feeling overloaded. The golden column of light began to recede, folding back into the violet-black opening. With a soft, organic sigh, the rectangular panel slid smoothly back into place, sealing the source once more. The symbols dimmed, becoming barely visible beneath the moss, but a faint internal luminescence still shone through. The emerald moss, however, continued to glow with vibrant intensity, a silent sentinel. I knelt, gathering my belongings. The tuning fork felt like a talisman imbued with a sacred energy. Thorne's Codex now felt less like an academic text and more like a sacred scripture, its pages alive with validated truth. I knew with absolute certainty that I had successfully completed Stage 2. I was no longer just the key, I was the active operator, the conscious interface, the nascent way. The Keepers had given me an immense responsibility, a glimpse into humanity's potential future, and a task of unprecedented scale. Integrate, their final command echoed in my mind. I needed to process all this to make sense of the vast amount of information I had received. I needed to translate the abstract impressions into actionable knowledge to bring the cosmic memory into human understanding. The hike back to the car was almost ethereal. The forest seemed to acknowledge me, its shadows less menacing, its sounds more harmonious. I moved through it not as an intruder, but as a part of its intricate web. As I drove home, the dawn was beginning to break, painting the eastern sky with soft hues of pink and gold. The meteors had faded, leaving only the distant, steady glow of the moon. The world was waking up, oblivious to the profound transformation that had just taken place deep within its wilderness and deep within me. I pulled into my driveway, the sun now fully above the horizon. My parents would be waking soon, expecting their son to be back from a mundane camping trip. I showered, cleansing away the dirt of the forest, but unable to wash away the indelible mark of the source. I felt profoundly different, subtly altered, permanently connected. The next few days were a whirlwind of quiet introspection and intense information processing. My mind was like a supercomputer, sifting through the cascade of images and concepts I had absorbed. I spent hours alone in my room, making notes, trying to articulate the memory of unity, the memory of balance, the memory of sustainability. It wasn't just abstract philosophy. It was detailed knowledge, intricate systems, comprehensive paradigms for a thriving future. I realized I couldn't keep this information to myself. The Keepers had chosen me to be the way, the bridge. This wasn't just for my benefit, it was for humanity's. But how to share it, who to share it with? Professor Sharma was the obvious first step, but beyond her, the path was unclear. The world was not ready, as she had said. My scheduled meeting with Professor Sharma the following Tuesday was more urgent than ever. I arrived at her office, feeling a powerful sense of purpose. Professor, I began without preamble, the attunement was successful. I have retrieved memory. Her eyes widened, a rare gasp escaping her lips. Already, that quickly, tell me everything. I spent the next 3 hours recounting the experience, the clear communion with the Keepers, the navigation of the Source's archives, the bleak vision of humanity's potential future, and the 3 core memories, unity, balance, and sustainability, that the Source deemed crucial for survival. I described the specific insights, the detailed concepts, the forgotten human potentials. Professor Sharma listened, utterly transfixed, occasionally taking rapid notes. Her face shifted from awe to profound concern, particularly when I described the bleak future vision. The memory of unity, I explained, is about transcending the divisions of race, nation, and ideology. It's about recognizing our fundamental interconnectedness as a species and with the planet. The Source showed me societal structures that fostered cooperation, shared purpose, and decentralized governance, allowing for both individual freedom and collective harmony. The memory of balance, I continued. The memory of balance, I continued, is about living in harmony with the natural world. It's a profound understanding of ecological systems, closed-loop resource management, and regenerative practices. The source showed me how to live abundantly without depletion, how to heal damaged ecosystems, and how to harness clean, sustainable energy in ways that are non-invasive and in tune with planetary rhythms. It showed me agricultural methods that enrich the soil, not deplete it, and building techniques that use natural materials and zero waste, creating living structures that breathe with the earth. Professor Sharma's eyes gleamed with a mix of academic curiosity and profound hope. Sustainable energy, regenerative agriculture, Thorne alluded to these possibilities. He believed the ancients possessed such knowledge lost to us over millennia. He saw them as echoes of the source's wisdom, passed down through early luminaries. And finally, I said, leaning forward, the memory of sustainability. This one felt like the culmination, the practical application of the other two. It's a holistic blueprint for a resilient civilization. It encompasses economic models that prioritize well-being over endless growth, educational systems that foster critical thinking and empathy, and technological advancements that are deeply ethical and serve humanity's true needs, rather than creating new problems. It's about building a future where every individual can thrive, where innovation serves life, and where long-term planetary health is the guiding principle for every decision. I paused, feeling the immense weight of what I had just articulated. Professor, it's not just theories, it's like a complete operating system for a thriving civilization. Detailed, practical, all of it rooted in human potential, not alien intervention. It's what we could have been, what we still can be if we choose it. Professor Sharma was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant, as if processing the sheer magnitude of the information. Her usual academic detachment had completely vanished, replaced by an expression of profound wonder and deep solemnity. "The cosmic gardener," she murmured, almost to herself. Thorne was right. It doesn't just store information, it cultivates potential. It offers the forgotten paths to flourishing. This is extraordinary, Mr. My Last Name, beyond anything I could have hoped for. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a new level of respect and urgency. "You have truly become the way. You have accessed the blueprint. Now the real challenge begins. How do we translate this memory into action? How do we disseminate this wisdom without causing panic, disbelief, or worse, exploitation?" "The keepers," I said, impressed upon me that the next step would be guided. They said, "Return, integrate, then we will guide the next step." I think this integration phase is where we are now, understanding what I've received. But the implication was that the source itself would somehow facilitate the sharing, or at least the next stage of the protocol would be aimed at making this knowledge accessible. Professor Sharma nodded slowly. Thorne's notes on stage 3 are less complete, but he did theorize about information projection or resonant broadcasting. He believed that once a luminary had fully attuned and accessed the core memories, the source could potentially amplify and transmit those insights on a broader scale, using the luminary as a conduit. Not necessarily broadcasting it to every mind on Earth, but perhaps to receptive individuals or to a specific network that could then act as a ripple effect. "Receptive individuals," I repeated, a thought sparking in my mind. "Like us, or like others who might be luminaries." "Possibly," she mused. Thorne believed luminaries were rare but not entirely isolated. He spoke of nodal points of consciousness emerging across the globe during critical times, but transmitting something as complex as a societal blueprint that would require careful targeting and incredible precision. It can't be haphazard. It must be understood, interpreted, and applied, not simply downloaded raw. She picked up the codex again, flipping through the later, more speculative pages. He posited that Stage 3 would involve a deeper, more active interface, where the luminary would consciously select and interpret specific data streams from the source and then act as the primary translator. He used the analogy of a complex holographic projector, where the luminary provides the lens through which the source's vast, multidimensional information becomes coherent and actionable in our reality. A lens, I thought, that resonated deeply. I felt like a lens now, my mind clear, capable of processing and refracting complex information into understandable patterns. He also theorized, Professor Sharma continued, that Stage 3 might require the creation of a resonant field outside the source, a way to extend its influence and information without directly opening it repeatedly. A more discrete, controlled method of sharing the memory. How would that be done? I asked, intrigued. He was vague here, but he mentioned harmonically tuned resonators, devices or constructs that could pick up and amplify the source's subtle energetic output. He even drew some speculative designs, blending ancient symbols with what looked like advanced crystal formations and resonant cavities. She pointed to a page with intricate, almost alien diagrams. He believed these could create localized fields, perhaps even allow for a form of guided telepathic or empathic transmission to a small, prepared group. My mind raced. This sounded like a more controlled, gradual way to introduce the source's wisdom, rather than a catastrophic global revelation. It allowed for the vital step of interpretation and application, which was critical for something so paradigm-shifting. So the goal of Stage 3 would be to selectively share these memories, I clarified. Precisely, and to identify those receptive individuals who can understand and help propagate this knowledge. It's about planting seeds, not trying to fell a forest with one blow. The source wants to guide, not dictate. It offers wisdom, but humanity must still choose to adopt it. Professor Sharma's expression hardened slightly, and we must do so without drawing the attention of those who would seek to control or weaponize such a power. That remains our paramount concern. We spent the rest of the afternoon poring over Thorne's later notes, trying to decipher his cryptic clues about Stage 3. It was clear his research became more fragmented and speculative towards the end, as if he was grasping at the edges of something he hadn't fully comprehended before his disappearance. But his insights into resonant fields and harmonically tuned resonators seemed to be the most promising lead. If we are to create such a resonant field or a device to access it, I mused, we would need what? Specialized knowledge, resources. Professor Sharma leaned back, a thoughtful frown on her face. Thorne had a protege, another student long after I had left academia for a time who shared his unorthodox interests. A brilliant young man named Elias Vance. He was an engineering student, specializing in advanced materials and resonant physics. Thorne believed Vance might be able to translate his theoretical resonators into tangible designs. What happened to him? I asked, a familiar sense of unease creeping in. Thorne's associates seemed to have a habit of vanishing. Vance also disappeared, she said, her voice softer this time. About a year after Thorne, the official explanation was that he dropped out, overwhelmed by academic pressure, but I always suspected a connection. Vance was passionately loyal to Thorne, convinced his mentor was on the verge of a world-changing discovery. He was the kind of mind that could have built Thorne's conceptual devices. So another loose end, I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. Another potential ally lost. Perhaps not entirely lost, Professor Sharma replied, a glint in her eye. Unlike Thorne, Vance was a meticulous record keeper. He had a private lab off campus where he worked on his independent projects far from prying university eyes. After his disappearance, the lab was quietly cleared out by his family, but I managed to retrieve some of his personal journals and design schematics. I've kept them hidden just in case. She reached into a locked drawer in her desk, pulling out a slim, worn, leather-bound journal and a rolled-up set of blueprints. These are Vance's. They're heavily coded, full of his own engineering shorthand and Thorne's abstract symbols. I've tried to decipher them over the years, but it's beyond my expertise in anthropology. It needs someone with a deep understanding of resonant physics, advanced materials, and perhaps even the source's own energetic principles, which you now possess. She slid the journal and blueprints across the desk. This, Mr. My last name, is our next step. You have the memory now. You understand the source's principles. Vance might have provided the how-to guide for creating a tangible interface, a way to extend the source's voice into the world subtly and safely. I picked up the journal. Its pages were filled with densely packed equations, circuit diagrams, and cryptic notes. My head swam just looking at them. This looks incredibly complex. It is, Professor Sharma agreed. But Vance was brilliant. If anyone could bridge the gap between Thorne's esoteric theories and practical engineering, it was him. We need to find the specific design, the resonant transmitter that aligns with Stage 3 of the protocol. This will be a painstaking process of intellectual archaeology, combining your innate connection to the source with Vance's technical genius and Thorne's theoretical framework. And if we find it, I asked. Then we will need to build it, she said, her voice firm, or at least a prototype. A device capable of creating that resonant field, that targeted information projection. It would be our tool for planting the seeds of change, for sharing the memories without revealing the source directly. The challenge was immense, but so was the motivation. The bleak future vision still resonated in my mind, a powerful impetus. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore, it was about survival. I'll need time to go through these, I said, indicating the journal and blueprints, and a quiet place where I won't be disturbed. Your evenings, your days off, she replied. And remember, absolute secrecy. These documents are just as dangerous as the knowledge of the source itself. Keep them hidden, even from your family. I nodded, the weight of the responsibility growing with each passing moment. My life as a park ranger, once simple and straightforward, was now a carefully constructed facade for a mission of cosmic importance. Over the next few weeks, my life settled into a new, intense rhythm. My days were spent performing my duties at the park, my mind constantly sifting through the layers of information I had absorbed from the source. My nights were dedicated to Vance's journal and blueprints. It was slow, frustrating work. Vance's notes were a jumble of advanced physics, obscure coding, and personal philosophical musings that bordered on the poetic. But I found that my connection to the source, amplified by the Viridian sapientia and the attunement, gave me an intuitive edge. Concepts that would have been completely opaque before now resonated with a subtle clarity. I felt like I was learning a new language, one that bridged the gap between scientific principles and energetic flow. I started seeing patterns, recognizing Thorne's symbols subtly integrated into Vance's circuit diagrams. I noticed how Vance used specific crystal geometries, not just for their aesthetic appeal, but for their resonant properties, much like Thorne had theorized. I began to understand the purpose of certain exotic materials. Vance was experimenting with the materials that, while existing in our world, were rarely used in conventional engineering due to their unique, often unstable, energetic profiles. One evening, deep in study, a particular diagram in Vance's journal caught my eye. It was an intricate schematic labeled harmonic resonator, type A7. The design incorporated a central crystalline structure, surrounded by a series of resonant coils and what looked like a complex array of obdurium, Thorne's violet-black metal-infused filaments. The diagram was accompanied by a series of equations that described the generation of a stable, focused energy field. Beneath the diagram, Vance had written a single cryptic note: for amplification and conscious projection, the luminary's voice made manifest. My heart pounded. This was it. This had to be the device Thorne had conceptualized for Stage 3, the harmonic resonator to extend the source's influence. The next Tuesday, I practically burst into Professor Sharma's office. "I found it," I declared, unrolling the blueprint and pointing to the diagram in the journal. Harmonic resonator, type A7. Vance called it the luminary's voice made manifest. Professor Sharma donned her spectacles, her eyes widening as she examined the diagrams. She traced a finger over the intricate schematics, her expression a mix of awe and profound understanding. "Obdurium filaments," she murmured, recognizing the material from Thorne's notes. And the crystalline structure, he was attempting to replicate the source's internal architecture on a smaller scale, a microcosm of the macrocosm. She looked up at me, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "This is it, Mr. My last name. This is Stage 3, the instrument for resonant broadcasting." "But can we build it?" I asked, looking at the complex components. "Some of these materials, obdurium for example, I only know of it from Thorne's description of the source itself. Is it even accessible?" "Obdurium, as a naturally occurring element, is extremely rare," she explained. Thorne believed it only formed under specific, intense energetic conditions, often deep within the Earth near source nodes. But Vance experimented with synthesized forms. He even noted its unique properties could be mimicked, to a lesser degree, using certain ferroelectric ceramics and rare earth alloys if properly energized and configured. It wouldn't be as potent as the true material from the source, but perhaps sufficient for a prototype. She continued, "The crystalline components are also specific growth chamber grown quartz, infused with subtle rare earth elements. Not impossible to find, but challenging." Vance himself had managed to acquire some of these exotic components through highly specialized, clandestine channels, often exchanging his own expertise for access to restricted materials. "Clandestine channels?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. This was getting more complicated and potentially more dangerous. "Yes, the world of advanced, unconventional materials is small and often operates outside official scientific circles, for good reason. Some of these materials have properties that could be revolutionary or incredibly destructive, depending on who controls them." Vance was a brilliant and resourceful young man, but he lived on the fringes, always one step ahead of those who might want to exploit his knowledge. Professor Sharma's expression grew serious. "Acquiring these components will be our greatest challenge. It will require discretion, resources, and perhaps a journey beyond our immediate surroundings." "A journey?" I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was no longer just about studying books and meditating in the woods. Thorne, in his attempts to help Vance, had compiled a list of potential sources for these rare materials, Professor Sharma explained. He called them the Symbiotic Network, a loose confederation of unorthodox scientists, artisans, and specialized collectors who understood the deeper energetic properties of matter. These were individuals who, like Thorne, often operated outside the mainstream, driven by curiosity rather than profit. They shared a common reverence for the unseen science of the universe. She pulled out another, smaller notebook, its cover faded and unassuming. This is Thorne's personal address book. It contains encrypted contact information for members of this network. He marked certain individuals whom he believed would be sympathetic to his work, or at least willing to provide the necessary components without asking too many questions. I looked at the old notebook, then at the complex schematics for the harmonic resonator. So we need to build this, and to do that, we need to track down Thorne's old contacts. Precisely, she affirmed. It's the only way to get the materials without drawing attention. We cannot simply order these components through conventional suppliers. It would immediately raise red flags. We need to be surgical, discreet, and persuasive. And you, Mr. My Last Name, as the luminary, will be our primary asset in this. You carry the resonance of the source. You can speak to these people on a level they will understand, perhaps even recognize. Me, I stammered. I'm a park ranger. I don't know anything about clandestine networks or exotic material acquisition. Professor Sharma gave me a stern yet reassuring look. You are more than a park ranger, Mr. My Last Name. You are the key, the way, the luminaire. The source has prepared you. You possess an inner compass, a subtle guidance that will lead you. And I will, of course, guide you through the intricacies of Thorne's network. I knew many of these individuals by reputation, if not personally. We will work together. Our plan began to take shape. I would dedicate my next few weeks to meticulously understanding Vance's harmonic resonator blueprints, familiarizing myself with every component, every material specification. Professor Sharma would help me decipher Thorne's contact book, prioritize potential targets within the symbiotic network, and prepare me for the unique challenges of interacting with such individuals. We will need to be careful, she cautioned. This network, while composed of unconventional minds, also includes individuals with their own agendas. Some are altruistic, some are eccentric, and some are less scrupulous. You must learn to discern. The source provides guidance, but human wisdom is also essential. The first name Thorne had highlighted in his address book was a Dr. Eris Thorne, no relation, but a fascinating coincidence. He was listed as a retired metallurgist and experimental physicist, with an address in a remote part of the Pacific Northwest. Thorne's notes described him as a maverick in resonant alloy synthesis, particularly interested in the energetic properties of metamaterials. This sounded like a promising lead for the obdurium-mimicking components. He's an old hermit now, I hear, Professor Sharma said, living off the grid, pursuing his own reclusive research. But he was a brilliant mind, one of the few who truly understood Thorne's more advanced theories. The idea of traveling, leaving the familiar comfort of my mountains, was daunting. But the call of the source, the weight of the memories I carried, propelled me forward. This was the next stage of the journey, the physical manifestation of the knowledge I had gained. My parents, of course, would need an explanation for my sudden travels. I decided on a plausible, if somewhat vague, story, attending a specialized park ranger conference on advanced ecological preservation techniques, requiring travel to different regions to observe diverse ecosystems. It was just enough truth to be believable and just enough ambiguity to deflect further questions. They were used to my quiet, solitary nature and didn't pry too deeply. The first destination, a small, isolated cabin nestled deep within the Olympic National Forest in Washington state, Dr. Eris Thorne's sanctuary. The journey was long, crossing state lines, leaving behind the familiar peaks of my home. As I drove, I kept reviewing Vance's schematics, the details of the harmonic resonator burning in my mind. The tingling in my hand, my constant connection to the source, now felt like a living compass, guiding me, reassuring me. After 2 days of driving, I finally reached the outskirts of the designated area. The road turned from paved highway to gravel track, then to a barely discernible dirt path winding through dense, ancient forest. The air grew cooler, heavier, smelling of damp earth and old growth. Eventually, the path opened into a small clearing, dominated by a rustic, weathered cabin. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, a sign of life. Surrounding the cabin were various strange contraptions, metal antennae reaching for the sky, complex arrangements of solar panels, and what looked like a small, highly insulated shed covered in flashing lights. It was a mad scientist's lair, nestled in the heart of nature. I parked my car, extinguished the engine, and stepped out. The silence of the forest was profound, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant cry of a hawk. My heart pounded, but there was also an underlying current of calm, of purpose. I walked towards the cabin door and knocked. A long moment passed. Then the door creaked open, revealing a man who looked every bit the recluse Thorne had described. He was old, with a shock of wild white hair that framed a face etched with wrinkles and a lifetime of thought. His eyes, however, were piercingly intelligent, a vibrant blue that held an almost manic intensity. He wore faded overalls and a thick flannel shirt. "Yes," he grunted, his voice raspy, his gaze immediately assessing, suspicious. "Lost are we, not many wander this far out." "Dr. Thorne," I asked, extending my hand. "My name is my full name. I've been sent by Professor Anya Sharma regarding Dr. Alastair Thorne's work." The mention of Professor Sharma and Alastair Thorne's name visibly shifted his demeanor. The suspicion didn't entirely vanish, but it was replaced by a flicker of recognition, a spark of intrigue. He looked at my outstretched hand, then at my face, his blue eyes probing. "Anya sent you," he repeated, a hint of surprise in his voice. "And Alastair's work, you say? Come in, then. Don't just stand there letting the cold in." He gestured me inside, pulling the door closed with a heavy thud once I was in. The cabin was even more cluttered than Professor Sharma's office, a chaotic symphony of books, electronic equipment, strange metallic objects, and what looked like geological samples. A faint, ozone-like smell mingled with the scent of wood smoke. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to a worn armchair piled with scientific journals. I cleared a space and sat down, my backpack still clutched firmly. He settled into a high-backed chair opposite me, scrutinizing me intently. "Anya hasn't contacted me in decades, not since Alastair vanished. What could possibly be so urgent that she'd send a young man like you out into the wilderness, speaking in riddles?" "Professor Sharma believes that Dr. Alastair Thorne's theories about the sources and the luminaries were not just theories," I began, choosing my words carefully, but accurate observations of a hidden reality. His eyes narrowed further. "And what does a park ranger know about such things?" His gaze dropped to my tingling hand, which I had unconsciously rested on my lap. He paused, his sharp eyes fixated on it, a flicker of something akin to wonder crossing his face. Unless you're a luminary. The directness of his question caught me off guard. Yes, I admitted, lowering my voice. I found one of the sources in the North Ridge, and I've communed with it. Dr. Eris Thorne leaned back, a slow, knowing smile spreading across his face. It wasn't a malicious smile, but one of deep satisfaction, of vindication. Alistair found one. I always knew he would, that mad genius, so it finally awoke, and it found its key. I'll be damned. He rose and walked over to a cluttered workbench, picking up a small, intricately carved wooden box. He opened it, revealing a single, perfectly formed crystalline structure, pulsing with a faint, internal blue light. It looked vaguely familiar, a smaller version of the crystals I had seen in Vance's schematics. Alistair sent me a sample of his Viridian Sapientia years ago, he said, turning the crystal in his hand, and a fragment of the moss that grew on its surface. He called it a bioenergetic interface. I always suspected the source itself was biocrystalline. He was so close. Professor Sharma believes we need your help to build a harmonic resonator, I said, emboldened by his understanding, based on Vance's designs, to project the source's memories to humanity. His blue eyes sharpened. Vance, Elias Vance, that boy was a prodigy. He understood the resonant properties of obdurium better than anyone. So Alistair's legacy lives on through his students. Show me what you have. I unzipped my backpack, pulled out Vance's journal and blueprints, and laid them on his workbench. Dr. Eris Thorne eagerly bent over them, his fingers tracing the equations, his eyes devouring the diagrams. He hummed, muttered to himself, and occasionally let out a soft exclamation of delight. "Brilliant, absolutely brilliant," he finally declared, looking up, his face alight with excitement. He found a way to stabilize the obdurium field using resonant frequencies and specific crystalline matrices. This harmonic resonator, it's theoretically sound. It's a marvel of bioenergetic engineering. But can it be built? I asked again. Do you have the materials or access to them? He paused, his gaze thoughtful. I've been working on a project of my own, synthesizing advanced metamaterials for energy amplification. Some of my components might be adaptable, and I've been experimenting with resonant crystal growth chambers. He gestured to the insulated shed outside. But the obdurium filaments, those are the trickiest. Vance was using a very specific alloy. I've got some similar ferroelectric ceramics, but they won't have the same potency. They'll need to be precisely energized by the source itself to achieve the true resonant frequency. The source can energize them, I asked. Thorne theorized that direct, resonant exposure to the source could imbue inert materials with temporary source-like properties, he explained. A kind of energetic charging. If we build the core components, you, as the luminary, could potentially charge them at your source. It would be a temporary measure, a proof of concept, but enough for a functional prototype. So you can help us build a prototype? I asked, a surge of hope washing over me. He looked at me, his intense blue eyes softening. Alistair was my friend, my mentor in many ways. His work was dismissed, ridiculed. To see it validated, to see his vision for humanity finally realized, yes, young man, I will help you. It's what Alistair would have wanted. It's what humanity needs. He spent the rest of the day meticulously examining Vance's schematics, cross-referencing them with his own notes. He explained the principles of resonant alloy synthesis, the intricacies of crystalline matrices, and the challenges of stabilizing the energy fields required for the harmonic resonator. He was a fountain of knowledge, a brilliant mind hidden away in the wilderness. "We'll need to work fast," he said as dusk settled outside. "These components aren't off the shelf. The crystal growth takes time, the alloy synthesis is delicate, and will need absolute precision. One wrong vibration, one impure material, and the whole thing could destabilize or, at worst, become a chaotic energy sink." He laid out a plan. I would stay with him for a few days, absorbing as much of his practical knowledge as possible, helping with the simpler tasks of assembly. He would then continue the more complex fabrication of the core components. Once those were ready, I would need to return to my source with the prototype to perform the energetic charging Thorne had theorized. The next 3 days were a crash course in applied physics and exotic material science. I assisted Dr. Eris Thorne in his lab, learning about crystal lattice structures, the principles of electromagnetic resonance, and the delicate art of material synthesis. My connection to the source seemed to heighten my intuition, allowing me to grasp complex concepts with surprising speed. I found I could feel the resonance of certain materials, discerning which alloys held the most promise for the obdurium filaments. Dr. Eris Thorne was a demanding but patient teacher, thrilled to finally have a receptive student who not only understood the theory, but also possessed the innate energetic connection to validate it. He spoke of Alastair Thorne with profound respect, constantly referencing his theories as if his former mentor were still alive and collaborating. "The luminary's touch," he mused one afternoon, watching me carefully align a crystalline growth in a chamber. "Alastair always said the key wouldn't just open the door, but would also imbue the tools with its own resonance. You're proof of that, young man." After 3 intense days, Dr. Eris Thorne had managed to fabricate most of the crucial components, including a preliminary set of obdurium-mimicking filaments and a central biocrystalline resonant chamber. The assembly of these components into a functioning prototype, however, was a delicate process that would take him another 2 weeks of continuous, focused work. "It will be a fragile device," he warned me as I prepared to leave. "A proof of concept, but if it works, it will open the door to a whole new paradigm of information dissemination. Return in 2 weeks. I should have the prototype ready for its charging at your source." I thanked him profusely, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and urgency. This old hermit, driven by loyalty and a shared vision, was putting his immense knowledge at humanity's disposal. The drive back was filled with a new sense of purpose. I had not only found an ally, but had gained invaluable practical knowledge that would be crucial for understanding and operating the harmonic resonator. I debriefed Professor Sharma via a secure, encrypted channel from a public library, explaining the progress with Dr. Eris Thorne and the plan for the prototype's energetic charging. She was overjoyed, hailing Dr. Eris Thorne's involvement as a critical turning point. "His expertise is invaluable," she said, her voice filled with relief. "Alastair always valued his insights into resonant materials. This is truly coming together, Mr. My last name, the luminary, the scholars, and the engineer. The pieces of Thorne's puzzle are finally aligning." The next 2 weeks felt agonizingly long. I returned to my routine, but my mind was constantly on the harmonic resonator, the imminent stage 3. I continued my meditation practices, further refining my ability to focus and expand my consciousness, knowing that the charging process would demand absolute clarity and control. Finally, the 2 weeks were up. I made the long journey back to Dr. Eris Thorne's cabin. He greeted me with a weary but triumphant smile. "It's done," he announced, leading me into his lab. On his workbench, amidst the usual clutter, sat the harmonic resonator. It was a beautiful, intricate device, roughly the size of a small backpack. At its center was the glowing crystalline chamber, surrounded by coils of fine wire and the subtly violet-black obdurium mimicking filaments. It hummed with a faint, almost imperceptible energy, already vibrating with potential. "This is a prototype," he cautioned again. "It has limited range and power, but if the charging works, it should be capable of creating a localized resonant field for information projection, enough for our purposes to begin. It needs your source's touch." He showed me how to operate it, a series of subtle adjustments to the crystalline lattice, specific frequency modulations, and a central interface where the luminary would place their hand to provide the conscious link. "It's designed to synchronize with your bioresonance," he explained. "You are the primary conductor. The source's energy will flow through you into the device, activating the filaments and the crystal chamber, creating the resonant field." We spent another day rehearsing the operation, ensuring I understood every delicate nuance. The precision required was immense. The following morning, I took leave of Dr. Eris Thorne, promising to report back on the success of the charging. The harmonic resonator, carefully secured in a custom-built, shock-absorbent case, felt like a living thing in my backpack, humming subtly against my back. The drive back to the North Ridge was filled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was it. The practical application of everything I had learned, everything Thorne had theorized, everything Vance had designed. This was the means by which the source's memory would begin its journey into the world. I arrived at the North Ridge pull-off just before dusk, the golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows over the familiar forest. The air was cool, serene. The source hummed, a welcoming beacon in my chest. I hiked to the clearing, the harmonic resonator a tangible weight on my back, a symbol of the responsibility I carried. The emerald moss pulsed faintly at the base of the fallen log. I set down my backpack, carefully unpacked the resonator, and placed it on the ground beside the moss. It seemed to vibrate in sympathy with the source, an inanimate object responding to a profound, unseen energy. I knelt beside it, took a few drops of Viridian sapientia, and then reached out, placing my hand over the glowing moss and the central symbol of the source, just as I had before. The familiar hum intensified, the moss flared, and with that organic sigh, the violet-black panel retracted. The column of golden light erupted, pure and ethereal, reaching for the fading sky. The keepers coalesced within the light, their luminous tendril reaching for me. "Welcome, luminary," their impression resonated. "You bring the instrument, the way is prepared." I took a deep breath, calming my racing heart. I withdrew my hand from the source and carefully placed it on the central interface of the harmonic resonator. Integrate, I mentally commanded, remembering Thorne's notes and Dr. Aris Thorne's instructions. Charge, activate. As my hand settled on the interface, the resin Aether vibrated, not just in my hand, but through my entire body, a deep, resonant hum that intensified rapidly. The golden column of light from the source flared, a silent roar of energy, and its warmth enveloped me entirely, pushing gently into the device. My mind, already sharp from the Viridian sapientia, felt like it was expanding, becoming a direct conduit. The source's immense power began to flow through me, a river of pure golden energy surging into the harmonic resonator. I could feel the device responding, its internal components coming alive. The crystalline chamber at its core began to glow with a brilliant, multifaceted light, mirroring the emerald luminescence of the moss. The obdurium mimicking filaments pulsed with a deep, violet-black shimmer, absorbing the raw energy and converting it, stabilizing it. A focus luminary, the Keeper's chorus resonated in my mind, their presence now fully merged with the flow of energy. Direct the current, shape the resonance. You are the lens, the shaper of the wave. I closed my eyes, focusing on the intricate schematics of the resonator, the knowledge I had absorbed from Vance's journal and Dr. Aris Thorne's teachings. I envisioned the energy flowing through the device not as a destructive torrent, but as a meticulously controlled symphony of frequencies. I adjusted the subtle dials, Doctor. Aris Thorne had shown me, my fingers moving with an almost intuitive precision, guided by the source's own energetic output and the Keeper's mental nudges. The resonator hummed louder, a deep, melodious tone that vibrated through the clearing, a harmonious counterpoint to the source's silent thrum. The crystalline chamber pulsed faster, radiating warmth and a soft, shimmering light that mingled with the golden column. I felt my consciousness intertwining with the device, extending my awareness into its intricate network, becoming one with its purpose. It was no longer just a tool, it was an extension of myself, an amplifier of my intention. The air around me crackled with energy, a subtle electrical charge that tickled my skin. I could feel the resonator pulling energy directly from the golden column, channeling it through the obdurium filaments, which now glowed with a soft, steady violet light. The prototype was taking on a life of its own, powered by the source, directed by me. The charging is complete, the Keepers resonated, their impression tinged with satisfaction. The instrument is attuned, its voice is yours. Slowly, gently, the intense flow of energy from the source began to recede. The golden column softened, its light dimming, though the peace and warmth remained. I withdrew my hand from the harmonic resonator, feeling a slight mental fatigue but an immense sense of accomplishment. The device continued to hum, its crystalline core glowing with a steady internal blue light sustained by the absorbed energy. It was charged, activated. I looked at the resonator, then back at the source. The violet-black panel was still retracted, the column of golden light still gently pulsating. The Keepers remained present, their luminous tendril still extended, waiting. What now? I asked mentally, my thoughts clear and focused within the communion. How do I use this? The prototype is limited, the Keepers reminded me. Its field is localized, its projection focused. It cannot yet reach the multitude, but it can seek the receptive. Images flooded my mind, not chaotic, but guided. I saw humanity, a vast tapestry of consciousness, most of it shrouded in a self-imposed haze of distraction and discord. But within that tapestry, I saw individual points of light, faint but persistent. These were the nodal points of consciousness Professor Sharma had mentioned, individuals whose minds were open, whose spirits yearned for truth, whose hearts beat with an innate sense of unity and balance, even if they didn't yet consciously understand why. You must identify these nodes, the keepers instructed. Seek them out. Your resonance will guide you. The device will amplify your intent, allowing for subtle, non-intrusive contact. How do I find them? I asked. Through Thorne's network, Professor Sharma mentioned others like him. That network is a starting point, the keepers confirmed. It represents a gathering of minds who instinctively resonate with the unseen science. But you must learn to trust your own inner compass, amplified by the source. The device will act as a divining rod for conscious receptivity. They then provided a more detailed understanding of the resonator's capabilities. It wasn't a broadcast antenna for raw data. Instead, it would create a subtle empathic link, a gentle mental nudge that would carry a feeling of the memory, a deep intuition of unity, a visceral understanding of balance, a clear vision of sustainability. It wouldn't impose knowledge, but awaken what was already nascent within the receptive mind. The prototype's limited range meant I would need to be physically close to these individuals to establish a clear connection. Do not force, do not overwhelm, the keepers cautioned. Plant the seed, let it grow naturally. The intention must be pure, to awaken, not to control. I nodded, understanding the immense ethical responsibility. This wasn't about mind control or conversion. It was about gentle awakening, about offering a forgotten path. Slowly, the golden column began to recede, folding back into the violet-black opening. With that soft, organic sigh, the rectangular panel slid smoothly back into place. The symbols dimmed, becoming barely visible beneath the moss, but the emerald moss continued to glow, a silent sentinel. I gathered my backpack and the now humming harmonic resonator. The air was charged, the forest silent and watchful. I felt a profound sense of purpose, mingled with a quiet apprehension. The theoretical had become practical, and now the next, most challenging stage truly began, finding the first receptive minds. The hike back to the car was different again. The forest was no longer just observing. It felt like a living partner, its ancient wisdom whispering encouragement. I was no longer merely a conduit. I was a fully fledged operative, armed with a tool of unprecedented potential. I drove back, my mind racing. Professor Sharma was the obvious next step. She was one of the scholars, a vital part of the interpretive phase, but beyond her, I needed to learn how to identify these nodal points. The next morning, I secured a meeting with Professor Sharma. I unpacked the harmonic resonator on her office desk, its subtle hum filling the quiet space. "It's charged," I announced, my voice quiet but firm. The keepers call it the luminary's voice made manifest. It's ready to seek out receptive minds to plant the seeds of the memories. Professor Sharma gasped, her eyes fixed on the softly glowing device. She approached it cautiously, her hand hovering over its crystalline core. "It's magnificent. Eris Thorne is a genius, and you, Mr. My Last Name, are an extraordinary conduit." I explained the keeper's instructions, the need to identify nodal points, the empathic nature of the projection, the caution against forcing the connection. So the prototype requires proximity, she mused. That makes sense for a proof of concept. It also means our initial outreach will be highly targeted. Who would be our first seed? The keepers mentioned Thorne's symbiotic network as a starting point, I replied. Individuals who already resonate with the unseen science. Perhaps one of them could be our first experiment. Professor Sharma nodded, pulling out Thorne's old address book. I've been thinking about this. Beyond Eris Thorne, there are a few names that stand out. Individuals Alistair trusted, or at least respected, for their open minds and genuine curiosity. She flipped through the faded pages, stopping at a specific entry. Dr. Lena Petrova, a brilliant quantum physicist originally from Eastern Europe, but she now runs a small independent research institute in New Mexico. Thorne collaborated with her on theories of quantum entanglement and consciousness. He believed she had an intuitive grasp of universal interconnectedness, far beyond conventional physics. A quantum physicist, I mused. That sounds like a mind capable of understanding complex nonlinear concepts. Exactly, Professor Sharma affirmed. Thorne always said she was half scientist, half mystic. She's been ostracized by mainstream academia for her unconventional theories, but her work is undeniably groundbreaking, even if unproven by conventional means. She might be receptive to the memory of unity, particularly its scientific implications for interconnectedness. New Mexico, I said, a sense of adventure stirring within me. Another journey. Indeed, she said, but a necessary one. This is how we begin. We approach her carefully. We don't reveal the source directly, not yet. We simply present her with the resonator and explain its theoretical function as a tool for empathic resonance and information sharing, something aligned with her own research into quantum consciousness. And then you, as the luminary, will provide the charge, the specific intent to transmit the memory of unity. The plan was solid. I would again concoct a plausible cover story for my parents, a research trip to study desert ecosystems for the Park Service. The journey to New Mexico was a stark contrast to the verdant forests of the Pacific Northwest. The landscape unfolded in vast, sun-baked expanses dotted with sagebrush and dramatic red rock formations. The air was dry, carrying the scent of dust and distant thunderstorms. The sense of ancient energy here was different, more arid, but no less profound. Dr. Lena Petrova's institute was nestled in a remote, high-desert canyon, a cluster of modern, adobe-style buildings blending seamlessly with the natural surroundings. It looked less like a traditional laboratory and more like a serene retreat. I parked my car and approached the main building. A young woman with sharp, intelligent eyes who introduced herself as Anya, Dr. Petrova's assistant, greeted me. She led me through a quiet courtyard to a large, sun-drenched laboratory filled with advanced quantum equipment, strange crystalline formations, and complex holographic projectors. Dr. Lena Petrova was a woman in her late 50s with a striking mane of silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her eyes, magnified by wire-rimmed glasses, were incredibly intense, missing nothing. She possessed an aura of quiet brilliance and an almost intimidating intellectual rigor. "Mr. My last name," she said, extending a hand with a firm grip. Her voice was calm, with a subtle Eastern European accent. Anya Sharma's letter was intriguing. She rarely contacts me, and the mention of Alistair Thorne's legacy piqued my interest. What exactly brings a park ranger and what appears to be a very unique device? She gestured to the carefully wrapped harmonic resonator in my bag, to my remote facility. I had rehearsed this. Dr. Petrova, Professor Sharma believes that Dr. Thorne's later work, particularly on resonant energy fields and interconsciousness communication, was far ahead of its time. She also believes that I, through a unique bioresonant ability, am able to interact with certain advanced technologies designed by Thorne and his protege, Elias Vance. I carefully unwrapped the harmonic resonator, placing it on a cleared section of her workbench. Dr. Petrova leaned in, her eyes gleaming with fascination as she examined the softly humming device. "This is remarkable," she murmured, tracing a finger over the crystalline core. "The resonant frequencies, the unique material composition, it aligns perfectly with some of my own theoretical work on quantum entanglement and consciousness superposition. Is this what Alastair was building towards?" "In a way, yes," I replied. "This is a harmonic resonator. Its purpose is to create a focused, empathic resonant field designed to facilitate the sharing of complex information, specifically certain insights that Professor Sharma believes are crucial for humanity's future." She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Insights? What kind of insights?" "The memory of unity," I stated directly, recalling the Keeper's guidance. "A deep understanding of our interconnectedness as a species and with the planet. Societal structures that foster cooperation, shared purpose, and decentralized governance. A profound sense of our shared consciousness." Dr. Petrova was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant, as if already pondering the concept. "Unity," she repeated softly. "My work explores the idea that consciousness itself is a unified field, fragmented by individual perception. If what you propose is possible, it would be a scientific validation of my life's work." "It's not just validation," I said, leaning forward. "It's about providing a path forward. The world is facing unprecedented challenges. This is a tool to awaken humanity to its own potential, to forgotten wisdom that can help us navigate these crises." "And you believe this device, with your bioresonant ability, can transmit this memory?" she asked, her voice laced with scientific skepticism, but her eyes held a spark of intense curiosity. "It will plant a seed," I clarified. "It will offer an intuitive understanding, an empathic connection to the concept of unity, not a forced download, but an awakening." She considered me, then the resonator, for another long moment. Her scientific mind was clearly battling with the sheer unconventionality of my claim, but her inner mystic seemed to be winning. "Very well, Mr. My last name. I am a scientist. I believe in empirical observation. Let us observe." She moved to a chair near the resonator, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath, adopting a posture of receptive meditation. "How does this transmission occur?" "I will place my hand on the interface," I explained, "and focus my intent, drawing on the resonance of the source that flows through me. The device will amplify that intent and direct it towards you." I sat opposite her, placed my hand on the central interface of the harmonic resonator, and closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, letting the hum of the device fill my awareness. I focused on the memory of unity that the Keepers had shared with me, the images of cooperative societal structures, the feeling of profound interconnectedness, the understanding that division was an illusion. I let the source's energy flow through me, through the resonator, shaping it into a focused, gentle wave of empathic information directed towards Dr. Petrova. The harmonic resonator vibrated, its crystalline core glowing brighter, sending out a soft, shimmering field of energy. I felt a subtle mental connection form, like a delicate thread reaching out from me to Dr. Petrova's receptive mind. It wasn't a forceful intrusion, but a gentle invitation, a whisper of understanding. I sustained the connection for several minutes, pouring the essence of the memory of unity into the resonant field, allowing it to flow unhindered towards her. I visualized her mind as a vast, open landscape ready to receive the seed. After a while, I felt the connection gently recede. I opened my eyes and slowly removed my hand from the resonator. The device's glow softened, its hum lessening. Dr. Petrova remained with her eyes closed for another minute, her breathing deep and even. Then, slowly, she opened them. Her gaze was different now, still intelligent, but softer, filled with a profound sense of wonder and a quiet, almost childlike joy. "Extraordinary," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't information, not in the traditional sense. It was understanding, a direct experience of coherence. I felt it, the underlying fabric of existence, the interconnectedness, the profound, undeniable truth that all consciousness is one, merely perceived from different vantage points. She stood up, walking slowly towards a large holographic display in her lab, activating it. Images of complex quantum entanglement patterns began to shimmer in the air. My research, my entire life's work, has been trying to prove this mathematically, physically, to create a unified field theory for consciousness. And you just showed it to me, not as a theory, but as a felt reality. She turned to me, a radiant smile on her face. "Mr. My last name, you have just provided the most profound empirical data point of my career. This memory of unity, it's not just philosophy, it's the scientific underpinning of everything. If we could truly internalize this as a species, truly feel this interconnectedness, the divisions would crumble, the conflicts would cease to make sense. The keepers," I explained, "believe this is the crucial first step, to awaken humanity to its fundamental unity before it can embrace balance and sustainability." "Indeed," she said, her mind already racing with possibilities. "This changes everything. My research, my collaborations, I can now approach them with a deeper, more profound conviction. I can speak of these concepts not as abstract theories, but with a new level of certainty rooted in this direct experience." She paused, then looked at me, a serious expression returning to her face. "This device and your ability is a profound power. How do you intend to use it? To whom will you reveal this truth next?" "The keepers spoke of nodal points," I replied. "Individuals who are already receptive, who can then act as a ripple effect. Professor Sharma and I will continue to identify such individuals, guided by Thorne's network and my own evolving intuition." "Then you have my complete support," Dr. Petrova declared. "Consider my institute a safe haven, a sanctuary for your work. My resources, my connections within the fringes of the scientific community are at your disposal. I have been seeking this truth my entire life. Now that I have touched it, I will do everything in my power to help it spread." Her words filled me with a surge of relief and gratitude. We had found an ally, a brilliant mind, a critical first step. Dr. Petrova wasn't just awakened, she was invigorated, her scientific drive now aligned with a profound spiritual understanding. I spent the next 2 days at Dr. Petrova's institute, sharing more details within the bounds of secrecy regarding the source's exact nature about the memory of unity. She meticulously took notes, her mind already formulating new research avenues, new ways to integrate this intuitive understanding into quantifiable scientific models. She discussed the implications for quantum information theory, for social psychology, even for neurobiology. She also provided invaluable insights into the intricacies of the unconventional scientific community, offering advice on who to trust, who to avoid, and how to present the memories in a way that would resonate with different intellectual frameworks. There are others, she told me, pulling out her own, more contemporary address book. Brilliant minds disillusioned by mainstream science's limitations. They are scattered across the globe, working in quiet obscurity, much like Eris Thorne. They are searching for a grand unified theory, a holistic understanding of existence. They are the fertile ground for these memories. She highlighted a few names, mostly individuals specializing in fields like bioresonance, consciousness studies, and advanced material science, all areas that connected with Thorne's work and the source's principles. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka in Japan, she pointed to an entry, a pioneer in bioenergetic medicine and vibrational healing. He would be highly receptive to the memory of balance, particularly its insights into ecological systems and harmonious living. Maria Elena Rodrigues in Brazil, she continued, an ethnobotanist and indigenous rights advocate living deep in the Amazon. She has dedicated her life to preserving ancient knowledge about sustainable living and ecological regeneration. She would understand the memory of sustainability on a visceral level. The scope of our mission was expanding. It wasn't just about finding individuals. It was about strategically connecting the right memory with the right node. I left Dr. Petrova's institute feeling more confident, more empowered. I had successfully used the harmonic resonator, awakened a brilliant mind, and gained new leads for the next phase. My debrief with Professor Sharma was enthusiastic. She was thrilled by Dr. Petrova's receptivity and her offer of support. Lena's endorsement is invaluable, Professor Sharma said. Her reputation, even among the unconventional, carries significant weight. She will be a crucial ally in framing these memories in a scientific, understandable way, bridging the gap between esoteric wisdom and empirical understanding. We spent the next few days planning our next steps. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka seemed like the logical choice. His work in bioenergetic medicine aligned perfectly with the memory of balance, and his location in Japan, while distant, was accessible. The cover story this time would be an exchange program for park rangers focused on integrating traditional ecological knowledge with modern conservation practices, requiring travel to areas with strong indigenous ecological traditions. It was a stretch, but plausible enough for my parents. The journey to Japan was long, crossing continents and time zones. As I traveled, I immersed myself in Vance's schematics, the harmonic resonator now feeling like a trusted companion. I also spent time reviewing the detailed insights of the memory of balance, closed-loop resource management, regenerative agriculture, non-invasive clean energy, and the deep interconnectedness of all ecological systems. I wanted to be absolutely clear on what I would be transmitting. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka's clinic was located in a serene, modern building on the outskirts of Kyoto, blending traditional Japanese aesthetics with cutting-edge technology. It was a stark contrast to Dr. Petrova's remote desert lab. The air here was gentle, imbued with the delicate scent of cherry blossoms and incense. A quiet, elderly woman who was Dr. Tanaka's head nurse greeted me. She led me to a consultation room where Dr. Tanaka awaited. Dr. Tanaka was a man of refined demeanor, perhaps in his early 60s, with kind, intelligent eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore traditional Japanese attire, giving him an air of ancient wisdom. His office was minimalist, adorned with calligraphy and a single, perfectly arranged ikebana flower display. "Mr. My last name," he greeted me with a graceful bow. His English was impeccable, subtly accented. Professor Sharma's letter mentioned a unique device and an urgent message regarding balance and healing. "Please make yourself comfortable." I placed the harmonic resonator on the low table between us. Dr. Tanaka, Professor Sharma, and I believe that humanity has lost touch with a fundamental understanding of balance, ecological balance, internal balance, and the balance between technology and nature. Dr. Tanaka nodded slowly. "Indeed, my life's work is dedicated to restoring that balance in the human body through bioenergetic medicine. But the body is a microcosm of the macrocosm. If humanity loses balance with its environment, it cannot achieve true health." The harmonic resonator, I explained, is a tool for empathic transmission of specific memories, insights into a sustainable and balanced way of living. We believe you, with your deep understanding of holistic healing and ecological wisdom, are uniquely positioned to receive the memory of balance. He looked at the device with keen interest, his gaze lingering on the softly glowing crystalline core. A resonant field for transmitting wisdom, this aligns with ancient concepts of Kai transmission and energetic healing. "A fascinating proposition," he smiled gently. "And you, Mr. My last name, are the conduit." "I am," I affirmed. "The device amplifies my intent, channeling the essence of these memories to receptive minds." "And what precisely does this memory of balance entail?" he asked, his eyes holding a profound curiosity. "It's a deep understanding of ecological systems," I explained. "Closed-loop resource management, regenerative practices, and harnessing clean energy in harmony with planetary rhythms. It's about living abundantly without depletion, healing damaged ecosystems, and building living structures that breathe with the earth." Dr. Tanaka's expression grew solemn, but also brightened with a knowing recognition. This is the ancient wisdom lost to the modern world, the way of sustainability, as the West calls it, but truly it is the way of harmony with self, with nature, with spirit. Our ancestors understood this. They did not deplete, they replenished. "Precisely," I said, "this memory offers a blueprint for how to live in true harmony with the natural world, using advanced ecological understanding and sustainable technologies." He closed his eyes, adopting a meditative posture. "I am ready to receive this memory of balance, Mr. My last name. My mind is open, my heart is willing." I placed my hand on the resonator's interface, closed my eyes, and focused. I called forth the intricate tapestry of the memory of balance, images of vibrant, self-sustaining ecosystems, of regenerative farms teeming with life, of buildings that generated their own energy and purified their own water, of communities living in profound harmony with their surroundings. I felt the source's energy flow through me, through the device, shaping the empathic wave. The harmonic resonator hummed, its glow intensifying, creating a subtle, shimmering field that enveloped us. I felt the mental thread extend, connecting to Dr. Tanaka's consciousness, a gentle flow of understanding, of intuitive knowing. I focused on the feeling of equilibrium, of giving back more than you take, of profound reverence for the living systems of the earth. After several minutes, I gently withdrew my hand. The resonator's glow softened. Dr. Tanaka remained motionless for a moment longer, then slowly opened his eyes. A tear traced a path down his cheek, but his expression was one of immense peace, profound insight, and a quiet determination. "It is beyond words," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I saw it, I felt it, the interconnectedness of all life, the gentle dance of reciprocity, the wisdom of the earth flowing through me. It wasn't just knowledge, it was a profound spiritual experience. The path to true healing for humanity and for the planet is clear now." He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. This memory of balance, it is the missing piece. My work on bioenergetic healing can now expand to ecological healing. I understand how the health of the individual is inextricably linked to the health of the planet. We cannot heal ourselves if we continue to poison our home. The keepers believe these memories are crucial for humanity's survival, I reiterated, to prevent a bleak future. "Then we must act," Dr. Tanaka declared, his voice firm. "My clinic, my research, my network of holistic healers and environmentalists, all will be dedicated to disseminating this wisdom. I will integrate this memory into my teachings, my practices, my collaborations. I will show them the way of true balance." He then pulled out his own meticulously organized Rolodex, filled with names and contact information. There are others, practitioners of ancient wisdom, pioneering environmentalists, spiritual leaders who understand the importance of harmony. They will be receptive to this message. We will begin to plant these seeds throughout the network of global healers. I spent the next few days with Dr. Tanaka, much as I had with Dr. Petrova. He absorbed the nuances of the memory of balance with an almost effortless grace, translating it into practical applications for health, agriculture, and community design. He introduced me to several of his colleagues, brilliant minds who, though cautious, were clearly intrigued by the concepts I presented. He outlined specific individuals across Asia and beyond who he believed were nodal points for the memory of balance. He spoke of a Tibetan Lama, a master of traditional ecological knowledge, and an Australian Aboriginal elder, deeply connected to the land. The potential for a global ripple effect was becoming increasingly clear. I left Japan with two more powerful allies and a growing understanding of the harmonic resonator's true potential. The device was not just an information projector, it was a bridge to deep, intuitive understanding, capable of catalyzing profound shifts in consciousness. My debrief with Professor Sharma was once again a triumph. She meticulously recorded the details of my interactions with Dr. Tanaka, marveling at the consistent receptivity of these unconventional minds. "It seems, Mr. My last name," she said, a profound sense of hope in her voice, "that Alastair Thorne's symbiotic network is indeed a fertile ground. These individuals, already seeking deeper truths, are primed to receive the source's wisdom. We are building a global network of awakened minds, seed by seed." "Who's next?" I asked, feeling the momentum building. "Maria Elena Rodriguez in Brazil," Professor Sharma decided. "The memory of sustainability is deeply intertwined with indigenous wisdom and ecological preservation. Her work in the Amazon makes her the ideal recipient." The idea of traveling into the heart of the Amazon rainforest was both exhilarating and daunting. The cover story would again be a Park Service initiative, this time focusing on international collaboration for rainforest preservation and indigenous land rights. The journey to Brazil was the longest yet, culminating in a small, propeller plane flight deep into the Amazon basin, followed by a long, arduous canoe trip up a winding river. The air was thick with humidity, alive with the cacophony of the rainforest, a vibrant, untamed symphony of life. The oppressive heat and dense canopy made me acutely aware of humanity's fragile place in this magnificent ecosystem. Maria Elena Rodriguez was not what I expected. Instead of an academic, she was a force of nature, a formidable woman in her late 40s, with sun-darkened skin, keen, intelligent eyes, and a powerful, almost fierce presence. She wore practical clothing and moved with the easy grace of someone utterly at home in the wilderness. She met me at a small, remote village, a communal hub for the surrounding indigenous tribes she worked with. "So the professor sends a young man with a strange device," she said, her voice strong and melodic with a rolling Portuguese accent. Her gaze was direct, unwavering. She spoke of forgotten wisdom and a path to survival. "The jungle holds many secrets, young man, and many threats. What wisdom do you bring?" I placed the harmonic resonator on a rustic wooden table in the center of her simple hut. It seemed almost out of place amidst the natural materials and ancient artifacts, but its subtle hum felt like a respectful whisper rather than an intrusion. "Maria Elena," I began, using her preferred address, "Professor Sharma believes you are a crucial nodal point for humanity to receive the memory of sustainability. It's a holistic blueprint for a resilient civilization, encompassing economic models that prioritize well-being, educational systems that foster empathy, and technology that serves life, not just profit." She listened intently, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Sustainability, many speak of it, but few truly understand it. They build their sustainable cities, but they still take from the earth without giving back. They speak of green technology, but it often brings new imbalances." "This memory goes deeper," I explained. "It's about integration, integrating human civilization with the natural world, understanding that our well-being is inseparable from the planet's. It's about closed-loop systems, regenerative practices on a global scale, and a profound reverence for all life." She walked around the harmonic resonator, touching its glowing crystalline core with a curious finger. "This device, it feels alive, like the heart of a great tree. How does it transmit this memory?" "It creates an empathic resonant field," I explained. "It doesn't force knowledge, but awakens an intuitive understanding, a deep knowing that resonates within the recipient. You, with your work in preserving indigenous wisdom and your fight for the rainforest, already possess much of this understanding. This will amplify it, clarify it, provide a holistic framework." She looked at me, then at the villagers who had gathered, their faces curious and watchful. "The people here, they live sustainability. It is not a concept for them, it is life. But the outside world it forgets, it destroys. Will this memory help them remember?" "It will give you the tools," I said, "the detailed understanding of how to translate that ancient wisdom into modern solutions, accessible to the broader world. It offers a bridge." Maria Elena sat down on a woven mat, her gaze fixed on the resonator. "Very well, young man, the rainforest is dying, our people are fighting for their lives. If this memory holds the key to turning the tide, then I am ready to receive it, for my people, for the earth." I sat opposite her, placed my hand on the resonator's interface, and closed my eyes. I focused on the vast, intricate tapestry of the memory of sustainability, the vision of resilient communities thriving in harmony with nature, of ethical technology woven seamlessly into natural cycles, of education that fostered empathy and ecological literacy. I felt the source's energy flow through me, through the device, into the vibrant, living heart of the rainforest itself. The harmonic resonator hummed, its glow intensifying, its field expanding, embracing not just Maria Elena, but subtly reaching out to the forest, to the very essence of the life surrounding us. I felt the powerful, ancient wisdom of the Amazon responding, intertwining with the projection, amplifying it. It was a communion of source energy, human intent, and planetary consciousness. I sustained the connection for what felt like a long time, pouring the essence of the memory of sustainability into the empathic wave. I envisioned a world where humanity honored its role as a steward, not a conqueror, of the earth. When I finally withdrew my hand and opened my eyes, Maria Elena sat still, tears streaming down her face. But her expression was not one of sorrow, but of fierce determination, profound clarity, and an almost holy reverence. "I saw it," she whispered, her voice husky with emotion. "The deep wisdom of the jungle, the ancient rhythm of life and death, the profound interconnectedness of all things. It was a vision of humanity woven back into the fabric of the earth, not standing apart from it. I saw closed-loop cities, clean water flowing freely, energy harnessed from the sun and wind with reverence, not greed. I saw children learning directly from nature, understanding their place in the grand tapestry." She wiped her tears, her eyes blazing with a fierce, renewed fire. "This is not just a memory," she said, her voice stronger now. "It is a prophecy. A vision of what is possible, what must be. My ancestors spoke of this, a time when humanity would remember its sacred duty to the earth. But the knowledge was fragmented, forgotten in the face of the destruction. Now it is whole again." She rose, her movements filled with a new energy, a profound sense of purpose. "This memory of sustainability, it is the blueprint for survival, not just for my people, but for all people. The deforestation, the pollution, the greed that consumes our planet, it all stems from forgetting this fundamental truth. I will carry this memory into every village, every protest, every negotiation. I will amplify its voice until the world cannot ignore it." Maria Elena then called over a young woman from the village, a translator named Isabella, who had been observing our interaction with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Maria Elena spoke to her rapidly in Portuguese, her voice impassioned, gesturing towards the harmonic resonator and then towards me. Isabella listened intently, her intelligent eyes widening as Maria Elena explained what she had experienced. "She says," Isabella translated, her voice hushed, "that the message is clear. It is the path to save the great forest and all life. She wants to know how we can share this with her network of allies, with the indigenous leaders across the Amazon, with the environmental activists fighting on the front lines." The harmonic resonator in its prototype form requires proximity and receptivity, I explained. It's for planting seeds in minds already open. Maria Elena, your personal connection to your network, your passion, your authority, you are the key to interpreting and spreading this memory in a way that resonates with your community and beyond. Maria Elena nodded. "I understand. I am the interpreter. I am the voice. This device has awakened the truth within me, and now I will awaken it in others through my own words and actions. But there are many who are ready to hear this, to feel this. Activists, shamans, tribal elders, scientists who work tirelessly to protect this land. I will identify them. We will bring them here one by one if necessary. My home, my network, my life, it is now dedicated to this sacred task." She then spent the next few days introducing me to a select group of her most trusted allies, indigenous leaders from various tribes, environmental lawyers, and bioconservationists working to catalog and protect the Amazon's biodiversity. Each meeting was brief, intense, and filled with a palpable sense of urgency. I carefully presented the harmonic resonator, explaining its theoretical purpose and the nature of the memory of sustainability. Maria Elena's fervent endorsement and her first-hand account of the experience held immense sway. One by one, under Maria Elena's watchful eye, and with Isabella translating both my words and the subtle nuances of Maria Elena's guidance, I used the harmonic resonator to transmit the memory of sustainability to these receptive individuals. Each time the result was a profound, deeply personal awakening. Some cried, some sat in stunned silence, others were immediately galvanized into action, their eyes alight with new understanding. The memory didn't just give them facts, it ignited their spirits, reaffirming their life's purpose with an undeniable clarity. An elderly shaman, his face a map of ancient wisdom, wept openly after receiving the memory. The ancestors always spoke of the great knowing returning, he whispered through Isabella. The spirit of the earth has spoken through this young man. Now we truly know how to heal the wounds, how to sing the right songs again. A young environmental lawyer, weary from years of fighting corporate interests, felt a surge of renewed hope. I have argued with statistics, with legal precedents, she declared, her voice firm. But this is a visceral truth. I now understand the fundamental wrongness of our current path and the undeniable rightness of the path forward. My arguments will now be rooted in this deeper truth. Leaving the Amazon, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment and a renewed understanding of the harmonic resonator's power. It was more than a device, it was